one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted to the CPS website for interested community members to access and watch. Although we are not allowing for in-person public participation, interested community members were encouraged to submit their names and addresses to Superintendent Lang if they wanted to participate remotely under the public input portion of our meeting. During our public input session, anyone who has joined us through the GoToMeeting platform and expressed interest in making a comment will be recognized by the superintendent and allowed to speak with the committee. If anyone watching this meeting live has questions or comments to share, they are encouraged to email one of us during the meeting. We'll read their questions or comments during our second public input session at the end of the meeting. So welcome to this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee. Tonight we'll be continuing to review the status of the current teaching and learning models occurring in our schools and discuss possible improvements in a number of areas. We also have the honor of having State Representative Tammy Govea speak with us tonight about how things are proceeding on the state level in regards to the current year budget, future budget forecasts, and along with any COVID-related legislation. So our first order of business is approval of the minutes from our last meeting on September 15th.
I make a motion that the school committee approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting of September 15th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, any corrections? I did have one correction. Just in one portion of the meeting, I think it was under good news. Maria was congratulating Jen Orsini for the great job that she did. In the minutes, it has her as the executive advisor to the mental board. I believe you meant mentor.
mentor.
So it's mentor rather than mental. I just wanted to make that correction because I don't want people think otherwise. All right, other than that, any other corrections? Okay, all in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Okay, any good news?
I have good news.
All right.
So it's going to the theme of creativity. So Jessica Nolette, who is the world language coordinator as well as cultural exchange, we're not giving up on the cultural exchange. So what's happening right now is the French and Spanish teachers at CHS have been working with their counterparts in Spanish and French-speaking countries to do virtual exchanges. So she's very excited. They have a plan for that, and they're moving forward. One of our other creativity things is to work with our students who are doing guided reading at the elementary level and being able to access the books that they may not have we don't use textbooks per se at the elementary level. So some of the teachers have come up with some creative ways. We got them plexiglass covers to place on the books, and they're using them in creative ways to be able to make sure kids have access to it and can touch the books and get close to them, because that's how little kids read. So that's exciting to see in the classrooms. We're going to talk about it a little bit later, but I know we've had some scheduling solutions to offer more specialist time at our middle school level, so that's coming up as an agenda item. And the weather has been very cooperative. Parker Middle School would like to report that their mass breaks have all been outside, given the weather, and we're kind of cross our fingers that we've had no indoor mass breaks at this point and can continue to go outside and enjoy the fresh air. And just up and coming, little sneak preview, this week's update might be showing some pictures of the biology teachers who are working collaboratively to develop a lab to test for microplastics in the science pond. Very interesting, that science pond. And then what it looks like for our biotech students when they're working with their peers to gather data, and what that looks like in the classroom. And a student showcase video of music created by students at the Center Elementary School with their teacher there at this point. So that's our good news.
Great. Anybody else have anything you want to share? I just wanted to mention, I know everybody at this table here, Chelmsford got a little nod a week ago or so. Money Magazine, or one of those big magazines, is the 14th best place to live. And I think the significant thing was the schools were mentioned as one of the reasons why it's one of the best places to live. And they did really mention that it's a good education system, and I think that's a credit to all the work that our staff does and the hard work our kids do too. So just wanted to mention it. All right, anything else? All right, we're now to our first public input part of our meeting. As mentioned previously, anyone who wanted to participate, type public comment, needed to email the superintendent and then log into GoToMeeting. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Lang.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. We had just one request to speak before us this evening under public comment, and I see they've joined us. So Eddie, I am going to unmute yourself, if you could possibly on your end do the same, and then we're going to welcome you to make a public statement. Oh, Ed, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So Ed, welcome this evening. You're live at the school committee meeting. I would just ask if you could please just state your name and your address for the record, and then we'd welcome you to
Sure.
make a public statement.
Sure. My name is Eddie Chu, last name C-H-U. And my address is at 17 Stonegate, Chelmsford, Massachusetts.
Thank you very much.
All right, so can I just start saying?
Yep.
Making my comment?
Yes, please.
Okay. So basically, I'm just like to comment about the McCarty's band program. I was informed that with the new school year, my son, who is attending 5th grade at McCarty, so we are very excited to join McCarty, knowing that it has a very strong music program. And so when we look at the amount of time that he is being allocated each week, I think 3 times for 35 minutes. And based on past conversation with my neighbors and friends, I was told that it has been cut short significantly. So that kind of concerns me. And also that knowing that for the 7th and 8th grader, they only meet like once a week. So I'm not a music major, but I'm pretty sure that is not enough for to learn any kind of instruments with that kind of time allocation. So it's just a concern, and just feel that it's hopefully this is just temporary, and then that the school committee will eventually increase the allocated time for this music program.
Okay. Ed, thank you very much for your comments tonight. If you do watch the rest of the meeting, this is actually a topic we're going to be talking about a little bit later on.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was our only,
That was our only public speaker.
all right, and is Representative Gouveia available? Okay.
The representative is.
So we will move on to new business. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to start tonight's new business with a special guest. So in response to some of the proclamations that the committee put forth over the summer, Representative Gouveia offered to come to one of our meetings this fall to speak to us with us about how things are going on the state level. So I'd like to thank Representative Gouveia for being with us here tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to Superintendent.
Thank you. And yes, we're going to have State Representative Gouveia join us remotely. So State Representative, if you could unmute your mic on your end, and you're going to join us live here at the school committee meeting.
Great. Well, I'm so glad to be here. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? All right, great. Very unprecedented times. I think that word gets used over and over and over again, but it goes without saying. I would much rather be in person with all of you, chatting about some of the issues that we care most about at the local level and at the state level as well. I know that you reached out a couple times with concerns about funding and making sure that we were doing all that we can at the State House to make sure that we are funding education at the levels that we promised to fund and that are really needed, especially in the face of COVID-19. But before I get into my remarks, I just want to say I am a parent of a 16-year-old boy who is a junior in high school. He's doing hybrid learning here in Acton. So I know from a parent's perspective just how incredibly challenging this really is. And I just want to thank the superintendent, the school committee, all the teachers, faculty, and staff. I know you've been working double and triple and quadruple time throughout the summer to make sure that you could welcome students back in the way that you could. And to the parents, and to the students, thank you for stepping up. I see here in my community, and I'm sure it's the same in Chelmsford as well, that students are following the protocols and the guidelines. And I know it's really hard when I see students outside sitting with masks and they're all 6 feet apart, I know under normal circumstances, they would all be sitting right close to each other and, telling secrets and sharing stories and just goofing around. And it's just really hard to, as a parent and as a state lawmaker, to watch just how much this has really changed their lives. I also have a college student, so for those parents who are raising young adults, my heart goes out to you as well, how challenging of a time this really is. And I share those concerns and I bring those concerns to my role as a state representative. There's been a number of us within the State House that have been meeting regularly to make sure that we are doing all that we can to fund local education, public education, make sure you have the resources you need. We've been on a couple calls with Commissioner Riley. I personally have not always felt particularly satisfied with those calls. I think there's a lot more that we could be and ought to be doing. But what we've really been doing in the State House is waiting for the feds to act. It's a little challenging at the state level to go and commit to spending a lot of money if we're not sure what kinds of resources we'll get from the federal level. And so the ongoing message, really since March, April, which is when we would normally have started our budget process in the State House, the ongoing message that I've received whenever I've reached out to the Speaker of the House or to the Chair of Ways and Means is that they really are waiting for, federal action. And we know that the latest congressional action fell flat on its face. They haven't passed the latest stimulus package, which was supposed to go more towards our local communities. And so we're constantly keeping an eye on that. The latest message I have received as it relates to the 21 budget is that we're not really waiting any longer for what the answers from the feds might be. We need to make decisions to make sure that we are able to run programming and departments and agencies can continue to do their really important work serving the constituents of Massachusetts and also to our locals. The other message that I received, I hope it's true, and I'm going to share it here as something that was shared with me from leadership, is that there is a desire to make sure that we are fully funding everything at the local level so that municipalities aren't left having to make up the shortfall. We know that revenues have fallen short all across the board. So that's the other thing that I'm hearing. I haven't gotten confirmation of that directly from the chairman of Ways and Means. I have a meeting with him along with a couple other colleagues next week. And the process that they're rolling out at the state level as it relates to the budget and having lawmakers weigh in, state reps weigh into what the budget ought to look like, are a series of meetings that they're having throughout the month of October. So I don't anticipate that we will have a budget to vote on until after the general election, maybe sometime in mid-November. I know, I've heard from you all, I've heard from members throughout, my whole district, and I represent 4 towns, just how incredibly challenging it is to do planning and to be able to forecast where you can spend money if you don't even know what the budget's going to look like. I know that, there has been some information that's come out that there's level funding from last year with inflation plus an adjustment for enrollment increases. I'd love to hear if that's actually been happening for you all. I'd love to also hear other questions that you have, but I want to know how is it going and what other information or resources do you need so that when I have my meetings next week, I can bring that back to the Chair of Ways and Means, just like I have been doing. And I just want to say one other thing, because I know other people are probably watching and listening, is, we did something very unprecedented in the State House in that we extended formal session. It actually is going until January of 2021. So if there are bills that you care about, whether it's related to education or police reform or climate change, we are still working on those. A number of bills are in conference committee. Usually this is a time when we're in informal session. We are not called back and convened for formal votes, but that has changed because it is so important for us to continue the work of the people because of the huge economic and public health impact of the coronavirus pandemic. So I'll end with that and see what questions you have, but I really do want to hear how is it going, because I know it's really challenging for those of you who are really on the front lines and in the classroom and overseeing and managing the plans and the rollout of those plans.
Okay. Questions or comments?
Senator Gouveia, thank you very much for coming this evening. Nice to see you.
I'm representative. Don't give me a, don't give me a promotion yet. I don't know how Mike Barrett would feel.
Oh, did I say senator?
You did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Representative.
That's okay. That's all right. I'm flattered, but
yes, I should have said president, but anyway.
Thanks, Donna.
I'm glad that you brought up Commissioner Riley and the Department of Education and some of the conversations that you've had with them. I think it was incredibly frustrating, and I know that, we're certainly looking forward, but I think that in order to be able to appropriately look forward and plan, we have to kind of take a look at where we came from. And to say that the guidance from the Department of Education was lacking and vague, not timely, inconsistent, and at times appearing to be hypocritical would be an understatement. It was very, very frustrating for us, I think, to try and plan over the summer with these rolling guidelines, the last of which we didn't receive until the end of July, I think it was. Okay, so, and then to try and reopen, at the beginning of September became an impossible task. And really, to have any kind of comprehensive, a sustainable programming, we needed much more time to be able to do that. And, again, this is unprecedented times, but I think that, we don't know what to expect in the future, and I think we do need more guidance from the Department of Education. I found it disheartening that Commissioner Riley called out towns for remaining remote when we had so little time to do the planning, and there were so many factors that had to be taken into consideration. So, we were one district that decided to go with the hybrid plan, and that has not been easy. And a lot of it has been done, with the hard work of our staff and our administration, trying to put together a program that we thought would be safe and comprehensive. But we really felt kind of left out in the cold from the Department of Education.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I do get a sense from other school committee members in other towns just how frustrating it is. And then to sort of be in this situation where for those who chose to go fully remote, the administration really pushing for people to get back into the classrooms when our numbers are going in the opposite direction. And I'll be honest, from a state representative perspective, we've been on a number of calls with Lieutenant Governor Polito, as well as Mary Lou Sutters, who is heading up the COVID response. And we're not always, we oftentimes get information from the local folks before we get it from the administration itself. So the communication has been a challenge from the beginning coming out of the administration. And I'm sure it's because they're working, overtime to create a response that makes sense. And at the same time, I think that they just, have sort of plowed forward, which is within the governor's authority to do. Once he declared the state of emergency, he has those powers to legislate on many, many different factors. And I share your frustration that the inconsistencies coming from DESE have been too numerous to count. And they're not the only agency, but they're one of the ones that I hear frustrations around most often. So I do hear you on that, and I will continue to share the local perspective when I have the opportunity to on those phone calls with DESE when we have them.
Thank you.
Hey,
You're welcome.
Other questions?
I know that doesn't give you the answer, though, to address, what you've already been contending with. And we don't know but one of the things that really concerns me is thinking about the lack of clarity around, well, what does it mean in terms of our numbers? What will be the tipping point for us to go back into where we were March 23rd or whatever the exact date was when schools were shut down and we, sort of did this immediate switch. And I think we want more planning and opportunity to do things more methodically and thoughtful. So that's something else that I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one issue that has certainly come up is the whole issue of MCAS and the fact that we're going to proceed with that in the spring. I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I mean, I think that, it's concerning, given, the fluidity of this school year, and although everyone is attempting to have things be as normal as possible, I mean, I think we have to face the facts. This is not a normal year. And to expect us to, administer MCAS as if it was a normal year is concerning. Unless it's not going to count. So.
Yes, completely agree. I have been working with a colleague of mine who he was a teacher. I think he taught junior high school history on the South Shore. He has filed legislation, as has there been a Senate version, to put a 3-year moratorium on the MCAS, because even if you do catch up, it's going to take a little while, and to administer the MCAS too soon when students haven't been adequately prepared seems like a waste of millions of dollars that could go to other educational efforts. It also seems unnecessarily anxiety producing, and I'm not really sure how you administer it when so many students are remote. I'm not sure what that administration really does look like. So there are a lot of questions that remain, and you have allies in the State House as well as allies in other school committees that I've also heard from, who are really questioning the thinking around moving forward with MCAS. To your point around, is it going to count or not for graduation, that I don't know. As I said, I have a junior. He didn't take the MCAS last year because we put a hold on it. I don't know what that means for him and his graduation and all of the other students who are in the same age group. So even as a parent, I'm really asking to myself, what does this really look like, and how could this really work? So I would say if you all come to some sort of conclusion about how you feel about MCAS, whether it's as individual members or of the community of Chelmsford, or as a body, please feel free to send a proclamation or a letter, just like you have on other issues that you've cared about, because I think when the locals come forward, when local leaders come forward and say how much a lot of this is impacting, it is having a positive impact when there is some coordination from folks at the local level. And I know that that's happened with some of the past issues that have come up through COVID. And so if that's something that you feel like is appropriate, I would look forward to receiving such information from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have a question? I guess I'll ask, I know that you're working on this year's budget still, but I don't know if you have a crystal ball, or what are you hearing about next year's? Because, even though, you're still working on this year's, we're gonna have to start working on next year's budget in a couple of months. And it's hard, we already, we were very conservative here in Chelmsford and proactive, and back in July, we all took budget cuts from what we had originally proposed. And so now we have to come up with, next year's budget, in December and January. What's next year looking like? Any ideas?
No, and these are the questions that I hope to get answered when we have our division meeting next week with Chairman Linkowitz. I'm fortunate in that I'm on one of the earlier side of the groups who's able to meet with him, so I can certainly get a report back to you on what I'm hearing. I have spoken to some members in leadership. It's not an official word, but when they talk about the budget, they're talking about it as 2021 and 2022, and even forecasting a little bit and thinking about, well, what might 2023 look like? Because if we go ahead and pull money from the rainy day fund or do some short-term borrowing, that's all going to impact us a little bit down the line, and we really don't know how long the effects of this pandemic will be upon us. So there is, I think, some thinking, not just for the next 6 months, but really what do things look like for the next 1.5 to 2 years as it relates to revenue sources and shoring up the budget shortfall, and then making sure that we're planning for the future. So one of the things that I and a number of colleagues have been coordinating on is making sure that we are looking towards long-term sustainability. Yes, we have to shore up funding immediately. I think there's going to be a very strong likelihood that we will dip into the rainy day fund. What number that looks like, whether it's $1 billion or $2 billion, I don't know. We are one of those states that's in a very lucky position to have a very robust rainy day fund, but we want to be very careful about how we use that. So I do think that the thinking is more multi-year and not just, well, how do we get through the next 6 months? Even though that is obviously of an urgent nature because we're already, getting pretty well into the fiscal year.
Right, thank you.
But I can report back to you.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
no problem, Dennis.
Great. Great. Anybody else have any questions for the representative?
Surprisingly, no.
Can I
always
throw
have
one out?
questions.
Yep, Jay?
Representative Gouveia, just something to kind of throw on your radar during the discussions around budget. I know not only Chelmsford, but a lot of communities are dealing with this, and it's going to impact the Chapter 70 formula going forward for, 21, 22, 23. It's the number of students who have opted to homeschool in, this pandemic environment. So, we always have a number of students who do homeschool in Chelmsford. We technically don't receive funding for those students, yet we kind of certify and work with them to make sure that they're producing an educational plan that's appropriate for their children. But this year, we're seeing between 50 and 60 more students homeschooling than traditionally would. And I know that's actually, talking to the Merrimack Valley superintendents, that's pretty common among the group. And I know that that's such a significant factor in Chapter 70, it's that October 1 head count. We're seeing the numbers at all grade levels, but really a significant number down at the kindergarten, first grade level, our youngest learners, which concerns me on a couple of fronts. One is obviously just the per pupil dollar amount that's tied to that. But secondly, in town, what we're going to have to analyze is say how many of those kindergarten students, that didn't come this year, that might come next year, how that's going to affect our enrollments. Are they going to enroll as kindergarten students? Are they going to enroll as first grade students? Some have opted to go to, say, like a private kindergarten for the year, so that's a little bit different. But I just want to put that on your radar because there has been some discussion at the state level with regard to some kind of a, almost like a hold harmless type provision for a year or so with regard to the homeschool numbers and to somehow, kind of annualize them within the Chapter 70 formula. But that would be a big hit, not only for Chelmsford, but all the different communities you represent. If there were no kind of, credence given to looking at those numbers and just how disproportionate that is compared to a normal school year.
That is incredibly helpful to know. I will definitely be sharing that with colleagues who I confer with on education-related policy, and will also raise this. So thank you.
Great.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for the representative? We good?
Is Maria?
Maria, did you?
They're looking at me, Tammy, because they want me to ask you a question. No.
Hi, Maria.
How are you? I know that this
Good, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I wish we weren't going through this mess, but we are. So question for you, and I know that, we have a plan out there that we would love to have a new high school. You know this. You've been to our building with us, you've seen some of our buildings and so on. And I think what COVID's done is it's really highlighted the importance of really every community thinking about what its buildings look like and its infrastructure. And we could face something a lot more difficult where, our buildings are that important, and they are important right now to the safety and security of everybody. So I know that we're going through a hard time right now, but it is so important to us to keep that at the front burner, because although we look good, and I think this town has really tried its very best to maintain its structures, it is so important to us to look at that building soon, and for it to come up soon on the agenda. And if there's something that we can do, that we can give more input or provide more information, whatever we can do, it would just be that important to us as a community. And I think soon you're going to be joined by somebody else that I know pretty well, Vanna Howard, up at your hill. And she is also representing a part of Chelmsford. It's a good team. We've got a good team of legislators who are representing us, you included, and thank you so much for reaching out to us and wanting to be a part of our meeting tonight and to listen to our needs and what we face as a community. But truly, I think we try as a town to invest all that we can into the education, but that building is important to us. Okay,
Thank you. I'm really glad you raised that. I appreciate it.
thank you.
So kind of
I haven't
related,
heard any talk about buildings, so I appreciate you bringing it up.
so just, this is John. So just in terms of, this is kind of related to the schools and the situation. You know, so is the state considering any kind of expanded testing footprint? I don't know if you've actually had to do any of the free testing. I don't know if that's federally funded, state funded, but is Massachusetts going to take over some of the responsibilities of expanding free testing? Because the process now is you go and it can be 2-3 hour wait to actually get a COVID test if you don't have a doctor note where you can go somewhere to get it. What's the state doing to expand it? Like, just, you know, rapid testing, you know, all the whole prevention part and detection of the process. We're not going to open schools unless we get a better count and make it more accessible to people that may not have the means to go to a doctor and get a test.
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't heard anybody talk about resources for schools to do consistent testing. I know that the state has done some focusing on if for-profit companies want to do testing, then they're picking up the tab for that. The they, meaning the business themselves, are picking up the tab for that. I know that the state has put some dollars into making sure that congregate care situations and residential facilities for our seniors and for our disabled residents, people with disabilities, are getting tested, that the staff are getting tested, not necessarily the residents. I have not heard anything about the schools, but that's something I can ask.
Yeah, I just think it would be good if
Get
we
back
had
to you all.
some kind of rapid response where if you have a cluster, you can get testing out. It's just not as easy as people think. And if you don't have means, I mean, people are just not going to go. And you're not going to know if they have COVID and they're going to spread. So, and I would like to reopen the schools next fall, so.
Yeah, I really appreciate this question because I don't think still we're doing enough testing.
No.
And I think we should be doing all that we can to make sure that we're getting tests out to people as quickly as possible and at no cost. I know in California, where my son is a college student, his roommate had COVID. He had a test. He was negative, thankfully. But they dropped the test off at his house, came back and picked it up. And you know, they made it super easy. My son doesn't have a car. There are many people who don't have cars or don't have access to public transportation, or if they think they might be sick, it doesn't make sense for them to get on public transportation. So we know that this is an issue. And so I think redoubling our efforts around testing is really important. So I will raise this question, John.
Thank you.
Okay. Any last thought, Donna?
Tammy, there is something at the federal level, the Rebuild America Schools Act. It's HR 865, and I know I think it's still bouncing around up there. But
Yeah.
I didn't even know if that was worth maybe getting behind to address some of the concerns that Maria brought up.
Yeah, I will look into that. You know, we have a strong delegation here in Massachusetts. We're really lucky, and with our Congresswoman Trahan really advocating for us. I was on a call with Congresswoman Presley earlier today, and I know that they're doing all that they can to try to make sure that, you know, we're not exacerbating the challenges that we were already facing pre-COVID, but that we're really paying attention to the educational opportunity needs for all students. So I will reach out to Congresswoman Trahan's office and try to learn more about that particular piece of legislation.
Thank you.
All right, everybody good?
Yep.
All right, well, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the committee for taking the time to meet with us tonight and to help us gather some more information about what's going on at the state level, and hope you keep in touch, and, you know, if you hear anything, please reach out.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, and
Thank
again,
you.
thank you for everything that you're doing for the students and the families in Chelmsford. I know it's really, really challenging times, and I know everybody's exhausted, so thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for having me here tonight, and reach out if you ever have any follow-up questions, and I'll reach back to you with the answers to some of the questions you raised here.
Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right,
All right.
so now we're on to
Yeah, we'll move on to number 2. A lot of discussion topics tonight, some information to share with you as we go through the agenda. There are several items that actually overlap. Give me 1 second here, I'm just going to shut this down. Sorry, just so that doesn't get in our way. There are several items that overlap, so not that we're going to bounce all over the agenda, but I just wanted to touch base on a couple of things as we go. But first, we just actually have a couple of updates. I'm going to call on different people to provide them for you, and I think they're important for the community to know what we're doing. But the first just pertains to our food service program, our school nutrition program this year, that Nancy Tellini, our director, and our staff works so hard on. So Joanna, would you mind just providing a little update on what we stand food service-wise?
Yes.
And actually some good news.
Yes, thank you. So our director, Nancy Antolini, and her team are off to a very busy start this year. As you have seen in the superintendent's weekly communications, the USDA has said that breakfast and lunch can be free for students we don't know the end date yet, they said, until the funds run out. So we're taking advantage of that. For a very short month of September, there were 10,070 breakfasts and 10,070 lunches served. That's great, and we expect the demand to grow. It's a grab-and-go program, so the students who are there take their lunch at dismissal time. And then for our remote students, there's pickup at the high school on Tuesdays and Fridays between 12 and 5. And then even for our hybrid students, they go for pickup for their remote learning days because it's just too much to carry, and then to just keep the food fresh and keep the menu varied. Like I said, we're learning the demand, and just want to thank the principals and the families and the teachers and the custodians and everyone who's really made September meals a success, and we look forward to the rest of the year going as well.
And can you just touch base, because again, for the viewing audience, so we're providing obviously a daily meal, but for students that are in school only, say 2 days, but they're out for 3, that they're able to actually come and receive the meal for the other 3 days. So
Right.
we're actually providing a week's worth of food for families in need.
Right, so they would, if you come Monday, Tuesday, and then you're hybrid Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you'd come on Tuesday afternoon between 12 and 5 and get your meals for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then same for kind of the cohort B does that on Fridays. Friday's a very busy day. And then the remote only come both days to get 2 or 3 days worth of meals.
No,
Make sense?
we've heard very good feedback from our families that are taking us up on this. It's open to anyone in the district. It's not really income eligible at this point. Any of our students who are in need of, and it's breakfast and lunch, are able to come. I believe you still have to register for the meal, is that correct, if you're coming in?
Right now, we're not asking people to pre-order,
Okay.
but that is coming. We just need to work out the software and all that, and then, but right now it's based on surveys and stuff and demand in the classrooms, we're getting a handle on how many meals per day.
How's that 10,000 lunches in a short month compared to like a normal?
So a normal month is more, because you have lots of people purchasing and a la carte and things like that. And so, but for reimbursable meals, that's a lot.
Okay.
And then this was only half a month,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, this is day 15, right? If I'm not mistaken, is this day 15 for us?
Yeah.
We're on there.
11,
That's-
12,
that's
13.
incredible.
Last count a while ago.
Yeah,
That's
15,
a-
day
That's
15.
incredible.
That is pretty good.
It is.
And hopefully this will, it's like a little advertisement for if we ever do go back to not all free, maybe families would just like to have school lunch anyway, because it's been a positive experience for them.
I think, John, you were saying you had a...
Yeah, my experience with it has been great, and Cindy loves it. So any parent that's not doing it, so first of all, I don't know if everybody reads all the material that comes out on this stuff. It doesn't take away from any other kids. So it's not like it's first come, first serve. They serve everybody. And not having to plan and figure out 6 meals for 2 kids, and if you have more kids, it's even more. When you're doing facilitation for your children during school days and all that stuff, it's been incredibly helpful for us. So, and we get breakfast and lunch out of it. And I may have stolen half of my son's pizza the other day because it was delicious. He actually didn't eat the other half, but
So this is free till the end of December right now, right?
We're not even sure if it'll go to the end of December. The USDA did not commit to an end date,
Beyond that, okay.
or
To when-
even up to that.
Oh, okay. So, same comment, and this is from families who have reached out and said that they were so glad that this was available. And these are some folks whose children had not eaten lunch at our school in the past and have not used our food services. And the parents are overjoyed because when they get home, they just grab and then join up again, and that has made a huge difference to them. So what John said, the convenience is really important to them too, but by the same token, they also said the food was good.
we're also keeping people employed too, which is
good.
great.
Yes.
And I'm gonna make this comment, those ladies are, I've seen ladies and gentlemen, so I'm gonna say, those folks are amazing, they really are. They, I was down there at the high school for a little bit one day, and they were on a break outside. And I started talking with some of them, and they work extremely hard and really try their very best to make it a great product to be served to our students. So, gun ho to them, they're wonderful.
Thank you.
I would like to echo what Maria said. I think it's been a total team effort with the building administrators. But all of this has really happened because of great leadership from Nancy. So I think that this has been an outstanding program. We do have some incidences, situations in the district, though, where we may have parents in need of food, but they don't have transportation. Can they just reach out to the principals maybe and see if we can arrange something, maybe with, I don't know, maybe a neighbor or something that could drop food off to them if they can't get to the schools to get the food?
Yeah, if something like that comes up, I think the best course of action is to try to work it through at the school level.
Okay.
Because I think staff in the school would be best to know the family and what the circumstances are and even supports and whatnot. So if someone's having an issue like that, I definitely would, either through the classroom teacher or the counselor at the school or the principal, assistant principal, whoever you're most comfortable with, relay your concerns, and I'm sure that people will try to do something to accommodate, to help out.
Yeah, a note or anything, because I know sometimes it can be very uncomfortable to have to,
Yeah.
bring this forward, but I think that we really have to encourage families, that we want to be able to help them and provide this
Right.
for them, if they need it and they can't access it because they don't have transportation, so.
Right.
Please, if those families are listening, reach out to us so that we can help you.
Yeah, no, we'd much rather, and the food is great. I mean, we'd much rather people be eating it than not. So I'm sure there's things that can be worked around. I've heard of different, people helping out
Right,
around that
exactly.
too. But a lot of it's just letting it be known. And just, so I don't want to say who to speak to, but just speak to someone at your school who you're comfortable with, who you have a relationship with, and, try to work that through.
I think our partnership with the Table of Plenty, too, has been
Oh, yeah, they've been
tremendous.
wonderful,
And, that they could certainly, maybe also help out on
Right.
some level, so, thank you.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Second, just a little bit of update on learning model transitions. This is stuff that we're internally starting to look at now, and we'll actually have a more formal report for you at the next meeting. But we had talked about, over the course of the summer, we had asked our families to basically decide if they wanted to start the school year in the hybrid learning model, or if they wanted to start fully remote, and they were going to commit to that learning model for the first, term or quarter marking period of the school year. Because we wanted to be able to kind of get our hands on where the numbers were, how many students we could actually support with the in-person learning, how many we couldn't. So we have that in place at this point. We've had a couple of COVID cases in the district that we've worked through with the schools, and we were kind of curious to see at that point were people going to request, maybe if they were hybrid, they wanted to go remote. We've also had a lot of families who really have seen the hybrid working well that selected remote that, said, hey, I'd like to give it a try. So we wanted to give it a few weeks to kind of work out those kinks. I would have to say at the elementary, middle school level, we haven't had a significant number of students wanting to flip-flop back between the two programs. Now, we haven't officially put anything out yet. This is more just, the learning model isn't really working for me, or I want to consider something else. So once we have the definitive dates on when we're going to be looking for those transfers between the learning models, and also we do have to look at the space. So space is going to be a factor. We can't take more remote students to in-person learning if we don't have the space in the classrooms. So this is all being worked on at this point. I think what I want to forecast for you is one issue, again, you don't know this until we get into it, and we're going to talk a little bit later around fall sports. One issue where we are seeing a number of students, this couldn't have been predicted, is at the high school level, some of our student athletes who selected hybrid learning are basically, because we have had 2 cases at this point at the high school, we're still using the same model at the high school. We're identifying the whole class and teacher as a close contact, that they're basically going out to quarantine for 14 days. And they're concerned that, they're basically being identified as a close contact. They may lose out on their sports season, even if they're not positive. So there was a significant number, I want to say in the 50 ballpark range, of students who want to now switch from in-person hybrid to remote to basically preserve the ability for sports. And this isn't something we had factored in to our model when we were doing this. So it is very disruptive to the teachers and the schedules and the flip-flopping between programs. So this is something that I'm talking to the high school about, because we're not going to be able to sustain students based on the sports season flipping between models. So, starting hybrid, wanting to go remote, after the season's done, wanting to come back hybrid. We just probably do not have the space for that. And it's just too many changes going on. So I want to flag that one for you, even as we get to talking about sports a little bit later. But we're probably going to have to set up some guidelines and kind of a policy almost about if you're in a particular model and you decide to switch to a different one, then you're committing to that different model for X period of time. Now, I don't know at this point, we're still running the numbers, if that's going to be another marking period, if it's going to be half a year, if it's going to be a full year. That I don't know yet. That's what I've got to figure out based on our spacing. But I at least want to put that out for you. If you hadn't heard of that, or if you had heard of it, that is a little bit of an issue we're working through right now. It does tie to, in the end, when we're talking about refining our, response protocol to a COVID case. So as I mentioned earlier, in full disclosure, we've talked about this, we've communicated with families. Whenever we have a positive COVID case within a school, we're not able to identify whether it's a staff member or a student for basically confidentiality reasons. But everyone in that school where there is a case gets a letter saying that there has been a case in this particular school. If it is a case that's contained within the classroom of that particular teacher or student, they receive a second email saying, so-and-so is going to be identified as a close contact, their student, let's say, because an individual within the classroom tested positive. So that classroom then basically goes in quarantines for the 14 days. After, even as a close contact, after day 4 or 5 of being identified as a close contact, it's recommended that you go get a COVID test. Now, we can't require someone to get a COVID test. Most people do, but we can't require it. Even if you have a negative COVID test, you are still in quarantine for the 14 days. You're basically getting the test to, in my opinion, kind of assure your family and the people that you live with, that you're negative at that point. But you're still required to quarantine for the 14 days. Again, I think some of our other districts in the area haven't taken as strict of a standard as we have with regard to categorizing a close contact. What I will tell you is, as of today, with the 4 cases that we've had, we have not had a single person test positive who was identified as a close contact, whether it was a staff member or a student, of anyone in the class, which really speaks, I think, volumes to the protocol we have in place, first of all. The fact that we are properly social distancing within classrooms. We're maintaining that 6-foot social distancing. We're wearing masks the whole time, even maintaining that 6-foot social distancing, so that, we're really not having anyone test positive, which is wonderful, which it just means that our response is working. I want to get through, and I've talked to Peggy, our school nurse coordinator, I want to get through these whole 4 cases, get to Columbus Day weekend when everyone will be actually reintroduced to school for the start of next week, and look at the data and see, going forward, do we want to make any revisions to who we're going to identify as a close contact? Department of Education, as well as Department of Public Health, have come out at this point and said it really is just a close contact as someone who has been within 6 feet of the individual for more than 15 minutes. And again, we have the extra precaution of the mask. And yes, you're in a classroom for more than 15 minutes, but you're outside of the 6-foot distancing. So once we get more data and we figure out if students are continuing to test negative, I think at that point in time, we can have a discussion about, is our definition of a close contact too stringent? Is it not? And we want to keep what we have going. I think that's a discussion we have to have. I'm not ready to have that today because I really think the protocols we put in place are working. We want to see these cases pan out. I'm very happy with the results we've had so far, but we want to make sure what we're doing is really working before we were to make any kind of change. But I just wanted to flag that for you because it is potentially going to impact some of the other decisions we make. And obviously, this is something that, and the kids are always on to stuff before we are, but the kids at the high school have identified as kind of a loophole with sports. And if they run the risk of being identified as a close contact, even if they weren't truly under the definition of a close contact, and they end up losing 2 weeks of their sports season, or if it's, intramurals, or if it's, a performance or something like that. I call them kids, but the students are going to, kind of figure that out first. So I just wanted to, at least for tonight, just kind of flag that that is something we're working on, that we can't afford to have kids flip-flopping between models throughout the course of the year. We are going to work with the high school, particularly because this is where this has come up at this point. We really don't have this issue with the elementary and the middle schools to figure out if we need a high school level policy on this. And I see myself presenting something to you with that data in future meetings, but at least wanted to put it on your radar that this is out there. It is something that we're looking at. And really, aside from that, all has gone very well with regard to the responses, the protocols being followed. Peggy, the school nurses have done a fantastic job of messaging. Building admin have done a great job of trying to balance and fill the holes for scheduling and whatnot. So the response has gone about as good as it possibly could have. I'm very happy on the testing end also, that the testing is coming back negative, which again just reinforces for me that we're taking all the right steps. And I think we need to continue for the time being. But in the long run, if this keeps proving out, we may be in a situation where we're over-identifying close contacts. And that might be a discussion we want to have.
In light of this?
Yeah.
As we move forward and as you propose something to us that is going to be more restrictive, my family was part of this last one of these, and so my girls have been in school exactly 2 days since the beginning of school as a result of it. And so, a couple of things. First of all, we did choose to get tested, and we knew that we were not close contacts, but we still chose to because we have somebody in our home who could be impacted. I was told that we didn't have to send in the negative test results. Now, I would like to know that we're keeping track and how we're keeping track. I will personally be sending it in so that the school does have it, but that's one of my questions, and I would think that if we're gonna get more restrictive in some way, and make it less number of people, that we would have to have some kind of guideline on that. The other thing is that at the high school, I think it is very difficult to know exactly where a person is sitting. Mm-hmm. And I know that we are doing everything we can regarding privacy, but of course, within about 15, 20 minutes, everybody in the high school is talked to each other and probably identified who it is. So that means then they know where they were in relation to the person.
Right.
But it's not like at the elementary school or the middle school where you may have a fixed seat where you are in one classroom for a certain amount of time. At the high school, you might be going to 5 different classes, right, sitting in 5 different seats, and maybe you don't even have fixed seating in that classroom. So I think it would be important for us to figure that out too, going forward, and it would be something I would want to know before I make any decision on it. because I think that that's very important.
I agree with you on all fronts. I will tell you, at the high school, the kids obviously do move from class to class, so that does happen. I had jumped in, a few of us had jumped in to just kind of help with class coverage one day to kind of see how things were going. And the students in the class that I was covering actually had specific assigned seats, and there was a seating chart, almost like you'd see at the elementary level, where kids were sitting in specific areas. So I do think within classrooms, students do have the assigned seats so that they know who's around them. That would obviously have to be enforced, because if we were ever to loosen the requirement, you'd want to make sure you really knew who was within 6 feet. Again, our desks are over 6 now, but I agree with you, like, that would be something we'd have to really hit home on. On your first piece, just before I forget, on the negative testing, what we ask is if anyone goes and gets a test, to report the negative test to us, because that's not data that we get. So if someone ever tested positive for COVID, the Chelmsford Board of Health would be notified, and then Peggy would be notified, so we would know of a positive case. What we don't know is if someone goes and tests and it comes back negative, that information is not reported to us. Or if the family chooses not to go and get tested, that wouldn't be reported to us. And in some respects, the people are out for 14 days anyway, so someone would say, well, why would you even care? I really do care, and I think what we've asked for parents to do, and we will get follow-up as well with families, to try to see if they have gone for a test, because we want to just, again, confirm that they've actually gone for the test and it's been negative, as compared to just not going for the test. So I know, again, not disclosing specific stuff, but at the case where, I believe South Row, there was the one classroom that had gone out. Obviously, one person had tested positive, which was the reason for the class going out. All but one adult and student in that class did go for the test, did come back negative. But the one person decided not to go for the test. But we at least have that data. So there was a contact with the family that says, you know what, we didn't go get the test. But we know the other 9 who did go get the test came back negative. So I think that's important for us to track. Peggy tracks it for us, and she's the kind of our liaison between each of the cases. But we do ask families to report the negatives, just because that's not information we get. We only get it if it's a positive. So that's why that was
That's
in the
great.
letter.
I also want to tell you this, that personally, what I experienced was very good. We were contacted personally by one of the nurses at the high school, following up. And it's actually a little bit jarring when you first get the email that says, you know, you're one of the students that's going to be, your student is quarantined. Of course, I have the dual students, so I never know if they're referring to both or one. And eventually got 2 emails, which made sense. So so it worked out. I think you had a couple of little kinks in the notification process, but overall, it seems like it worked in the notification process. So so that's good.
Donnie, you had something?
A couple of things, but the first one, I just want to follow up on what Maria said about the letters.
Yeah.
There seemed to be some confusion when the first notice went out saying that there was a positive case,
Right.
and then the second one went out saying your child has been enclosed. But if you had multiple children at the high school, you couldn't tell which child they were referring to. Okay, so we need, I don't think we actually put your son John, was in close contact. I think it was just your child, so I think that left some parents concerned about, which child are they talking about, so they kept them all home. So I don't know if we've fixed that at this point.
Yeah, when you brought that to my attention, the global letter goes out to the whole school.
Right.
But the secondary letter, I think it was a matter of if it was sent out through Blackboard, if it was sent out through Aspen, the system itself, where it should grab the student name and indicate that. So I think that has been worked out for the future.
Okay.
I don't know if it was for that first communication. But it,
So I just wanted to tell you, Donna, because I did go through that confusion. My girls each also received an email. So that then made a difference to me, because although I had received a notification,
Right.
then each one received an email.
Through their Gmail account.
No, what we started doing is the kids at the high school in particular, because they're on their email all the time, we're emailing the parent so that the parent knows through X2, but we're also individually emailing the student. Because sometimes we found that the parents and the students don't talk, about the
Yes.
email.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that the student knows that they're to be quarantined and not to report to school. So the student-specific email that goes to the student is kind of the factor. What we're trying to do is make sure on the parent communication that it lists the student's name in case there are multiple.
Right.
But students at the high school level at this point are getting their own communication.
And I'm just, maybe something to think about is to have a little lead time for the parents before the student gets theirs, because we wouldn't want the student to be incredibly stressed out before
Yeah.
the parent has received notification that,
I can honestly see it going either way.
I know.
Sometimes the
I'm
parents
just putting
are-
that out there,
Yeah,
though,
I
that,
think-
some kids are not gonna react well to
Right.
that, and I think that the parents need to know what's going on.
Right.
I think, going back to the seating arrangements, I think, if it is optional at this point, that, procedurally, that maybe we make that a procedural must, if we think about.
I don't think it's optional.
Okay.
I was reiterating, like, when I was there, it
It's a
was
pretty common
actual.
protocol now.
Yeah.
seating
Yeah,
chart.
no, I agree.
Set
I
seating
agree.
charts and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even,
Yeah.
I was in a class and it was set up by the chart
Yeah.
where they sit.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that,
you have tape on the
everybody's
floor, you
clear
can't
on
move the
that.
desk,
Yep.
yeah.
Tape
You
on the
know,
desk,
yeah,
people.
yeah.
And then the last thing is, with the, reviewing the restrictions, I can't emphasize this enough. This really has to be a community, considered, decision. And, we're not the experts, in this. And, so I'm wondering, what role is the Department of Health gonna, Board of Health, I can't get anything like that. Board of Health, playing in helping us to be able to make these decisions, as we move forward, because, we're in yellow now, we might go to red, we might go to green. What is the threshold that we're using, for determining these things?
And that we're gonna talk a little bit about later on tonight. But, Peggy and Sue Rosa from the Board of Health, Sue has been great, the Board of Health has been super to work with. They're in communication daily, if not multiple times a day. I actually had a communication with Sue myself today, just about a couple of different matters. So they're absolutely involved, and if we were to do that and make a recommendation, like even the protocols we put in place for the school year, those were all vetted through Sue and the Board of Health to make sure that Sue and Peggy were on the same page, and then ultimately our nurses in the school, because we don't want people getting mixed information. So no, they would be part of that conversation. We'd all have to feel comfortable with it. I think what we're seeing is, you've even had like conflicting information from different departments, so like say DESI guidelines might not have been in line with public health guidelines, and
Right.
at this point in
CDC,
time
yeah.
though, CDC, but at this point in time, they are coming into line with each other. So I just think it's worth, before we make a change or even a recommendation, obviously everyone would have to be on the same page. It's at least nice to see all those guidelines and now starting to line up and to fall into pattern together. But no, we would involve them, and even when we talk a little bit later on today about, do we make the decision as a community about whether we maintain the model or do we go to fully remote? There's different community context that has to be considered, and we only have the school context, so we rely on Sue and the Board of Health to provide kind of the community context. So we can chat a little bit about that afterward if you want.
Great,
But no, they're a key player in all of this.
thank you.
Anything else on this topic?
On this topic,
Yeah.
whatever we do decide to do, I know sports has a great impact right now, but it's not only sports, it's all activities. And seeing the joy in the faces of my two color guard girls today meeting with band for the first time, I hope everybody realizes the privilege it is to be able to participate in these things. And I keep returning to what Jeff said, which I think was very key. We're all dependent on each other. And this is a privilege to be able to do this. And if we relax things, not relax, but decrease the number of people and so on, and we change the rules, I truly hope people understand how important this is and how it impacts every single person in the process. And that's all I'm gonna say, but I would want to know about the seating and so on in the high school.
Yeah, that's all, it is valid, but we wouldn't be doing this just for the athletics, but I even mentioned like the intramurals of the clubs and things like this.
It's
like where-
everybody.
Where the students are starting to want to get together. You could have the same thing happen if it was a student who was actively involved with the club and they don't want to risk losing that
Right.
club because of this. We have worked, and everyone has worked so incredibly hard to try to make this model work. that, we're constantly messaging, and we're gonna continue messaging that, it would really be a shame after all the effort and time we put into this if, because we can't follow the rules and people get lax on distancing or stop wearing masks, that we have to pull the plug and go fully remote. Unfortunately, we're prepared to do that. I don't want to have to do that, so I think we need to continue the messaging about the importance of doing all of this stuff to be able to maintain the in-person learning. It's that critical, and unfortunately, it's not going to take much to have it be taken away, but we really need people to be vigilant and continue, again, the distancing, the hand washing, the wearing of the masks. It's critical to allow us to keep going on.
And we also have obligations to our staff and
do.
the folks who work in our schools, who make going to school every day possible. And that's something we have to keep in mind too.
Yep, I agree.
All right, anything else on this topic? Okay, next up is transportation.
Yep, we've been doing a lot of work on transportation, and I'm going to ask Joanna again to speak to this. We put together some recommendations. Now that we're a couple weeks into the school year, things are pretty fluid with regard to our ridership, and we have some new, I won't steal all your thunder, we have some new new recommendations for you tonight. So, Joanna, come on board.
All right. So I'm going to talk about who we're transporting today, and then who we're going to recommend we transport starting October 19th, if you guys all agree. So just a refresher, we have a decreased capacity on the buses due to the distancing. So we limited the transportation to K to 6 over 2 miles, because that's what we're required to do by law. K to 6 under 2 miles who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and siblings of grade 5 and 6 who attend the same middle school who are in grade 7 and 8 because they can sit together. So that's where we're at today. There's 658 students riding the bus. So, and then just another recap, we issued all the refunds in August, and that primarily went, to grades 7 to 12, and then, some of the K to 6 under 2 miles. So we've looked at the data, and our recommendation is to introduce grades K to 8 over 1 mile. And that will pick up 799 more students, and that will bring our we're still, have 29 buses available to us. And then on there's 2 spreadsheets kind of attached, and the one that shows the 799 students is the one kind of highlighted in green. And we'd still be all right. And then here's the real wild card. We have hybrid, so that's all the hybrid students. We have remote students who are K to 6 over 2 miles who could come back, and we would be required to transport them. We estimate that number to be 347 students. So even if they came back, and then with this 799 that we're recommending, we would still be okay with our capacity on our buses. So that's why we're kind of stopping there. See how it goes. We'd still need people to register. We still need to know about you. We'd still give you a bus pass. And then we'd also recommend for this 1 year that the bus pass still be at no charge. The refund process was one and done.
Yeah, I think there's certain budgetary things we're just going to have to deal with this year. I think one of them is the fluctuation. You're charging the fee, then doing the reimbursement, trying to explain that is difficult. The other thing is technically people are only in school for 2 days a week now and not for 5. So is it a prorated fee? Is it not? The fee that we actually charge to ride the bus, as has been proven in the counts, is really just a nominal fee to basically commit to riding the bus. It really does not pay for a significant percentage of the total cost of the bus. We proved out basically if we only had to provide transportation to students who were grades K to 6 who were over 2 miles, we might have been able to do that with half the bus fleet. We wouldn't have needed all the bus fleet. So we're incurring that cost of the district. We're tacking on a little bit of a fee, which really isn't representative of the true cost of what it's costing us. And I think at this point, to go back to add a fee, again, hoping we're gonna be in for the rest of the year, but what if our model changes and we go fully remote? It would just be, I think, just too much, even just processing-wise, that, we realize that this has just been a difficult school year, and just run the busing that we're running this year as kind of a service for families. And hopefully families will be appreciative and be understanding and accepting of that. So the recommendation would be to basically eat that cost within our budget and to not pass cost on to families at this point. Just my other caveat, the other thing is when we're talking with Joanna and Peter, who've done a very good job running these numbers, I do not want to be in a situation where we over subscribe and we ever have to go back to families and say, "Oop, we allowed too many to come on board now, so we're going to have to take some more off." That's why we've been kind of doing this incrementally. They both feel very comfortable, with this recommendation of going to the mile. Would I love to just bring everyone on? Sure. But I don't want to bring everyone on and then say, oops, made a mistake, and now we have to ask some people not to ride. So I do think it makes sense to continue doing this incrementally. To offer this service, this is huge. I mean, to now add all of 7th and 8th grade and everyone down to just a mile is significant. And those are some significant numbers we're capturing. Go through the process, allow these people to enroll. The other thing that we have done is, although we probably only needed half the buses to start the school year, we created the bus routes based on as if 29 buses were running. That's why a lot of our buses are running not at full capacity right now, because we didn't want to have to go back and redo all the routes, reissue bus passes to say if we're only running 15 buses, have to reissue bus passes to all the students, change times, change stops, and things like that. We figured for a couple of weeks, based on the data, if we're going to be able to add, let's try to get back to the semblance of the bus routes we previously had, so that we're just actually including new kids onto the runs, and we're not having to start from scratch. So this could be a seamless, in a perfect world, of, if we commit to this action tonight, tomorrow and Thursday, we're notifying families of this new process. They're able to go online to register. The buses are already technically there and routed, ballpark, where they should be. Peter can add these students to runs, get bus passes out, and then students, as early as next week, might be able to start jumping on to, why you give me the eye?
October 19th.
October 19th, they would be able to jump onto the bus runs. I think I said the 19th, that's what I meant. So that was the thought process. So there really has been a lot of work that's gone into this. I think it's another very big incremental step to help out. I honestly would not be comfortable at this point going below the mile until we see where these numbers pan.
Okay, so could you give a little, I haven't heard too much about problems with the bus, on the bus, so just asking if there's been any issues, because you have all these, restrictions, one seat, one person, and all that stuff. So just wanted to know how that's going. What I have heard on comments has been that, the buses are not full.
Right.
There's not, too many people who are actually on the bus. And I'm wondering if that's because those folks who we are required to offer services to just have opted not to use them and don't let us know, or what it is. And if so, if there's some way that they can let people know, because there are people who would want to use the service and who need it. So is there any way we can deal with that?
That's kind of what this is addressing. So I mentioned when we did the initial pull of riders who wanted to ride, we didn't have to run all 29 buses. So we could have, say, run half the fleet. What we decided to do, because we didn't want to have a lot of changes for families, we decided to basically build bus routes as if we had 29 buses on the road, because that's what we were contracted with, and that's what we were comfortable getting up to using, the full capacity. So we do have buses right now that are running that are not full, that have space on them. for two reasons. One, because we didn't need that many buses on the road to accomplish our transportation, but we didn't want to have to go changing up all the routes and times for everyone
Okay.
as we added riders, right? So this will be much more seamless.
Okay.
The other thing is, there is a group of students who qualify for the bus because they're in grades K to 6, who live more than 2 miles from the school. They don't have to tell us that they don't want to ride the bus, right? So some of them normally would have registered, and they would have ridden the bus for free, but there's nothing to require them to. So that's what we're trying to provide ourselves, a little bit of cushion, because even if, they end up wanting to change models, so some of them might be remote right now. But if they ever got accepted into hybrid, now they're going to want to jump on the bus. So we're providing ourselves just a little bit of capacity to, even by doing this, going down to the mile, that we're going to be able to add some students on. The other thing is, it's not 50% of the kids are in cohort A and 50% of the kids are in cohort B who need the buses either. So we have to provide ourselves a little bit of cushion for that. But I think this really goes a long way towards addressing that. This is going to bring the buses, many more kids on, and it's going to be, as I mentioned, much more seamless than having to start from scratch and create new routes. We can now just add kids to the existing routes.
I'm all for
On
adding
October
people.
19th, which is what Joanna said. So again, Maria, I do think this really addresses a lot of that. We just couldn't overbook before we knew where we were at. But I do think that this is going to be viewed as very helpful.
And some of the feedback is, that we've heard in prior years, the bus stops, they'd like it, that there's still requests, and we try to address them as best we can, so.
Okay, thank you.
So talk about the high school?
Yep.
Okay,
Which is exciting.
right. So,
Joanna, wait till after the high school.
Sure.
okay. So the proposal, so right now, we're not transporting anyone at the high school. So the proposal would be to run, almost like, have 12 bus stops around town, and then it would be like an express bus from this stop to the high school. And they would come, they would board at 6:45 in the morning. And that, hopefully, we estimate could reach, I think I had it in here, over 600 students. And then once, these families would still have to register, because we still need to know, and then how many buses are we going to need at that stop? Are we going to need 1? Are we going to need 2? Are we going to need 3? Depending on how many people are interested in this, to still do it safely with the right capacity. And they'd still get a bus stop or a bus pass, and then the reverse would happen at dismissal.
So this concept is really more like a shuttle bus concept. What we're able to do is basically put this into the schedule without altering the middle school and the elementary runs. We looked at this 100 different ways, and we really cannot run the high school transportation like we used to under this format. But what Peter and Joanna have done is taken a look at the distribution of high school kids town-wide, where they're typically coming from, and come up with these 12 spots as kind of on the outer periphery of town, that, again, instead of families or kids having to drive all the way to the high school, if you drop your child off at one of these stops, and you'll be, again, you still have to register, you'd get a bus pass, you'd be assigned, because we need to know how many kids are going to be at these stops. This would just be a direct shuttle. It's not going to make stops along the way. But let's say you were at the South Row one. You'd be there at 6:45 in the morning. You'd get on the bus, 10, 12, 15 kids, whoever gets on the bus, and it goes directly to the high school. And it drops off, and then it can go on its middle school run. We don't have the time within the schedule to have it be making the traditional stops and weaving through neighborhoods. But what this, I think, would be very helpful to parents and, students, it's just that direct shot. It's going to help control traffic at the high school. You're not going to see as many cars going through town, because they're basically going to be in a bus. Even as a parent, I would be happier dropping my student off to the bus at one of these locations as opposed to having to drive all the way to the high school, and then vice versa at the end of the day. This gives us the opportunity to do the shuttle. It leaves the high school, it drops here, and then the bus can go on to its middle school, more traditional route. So this is, I think this is, hopefully will be welcomed at the high school as an option. It's also a no-cost option. We're saying do this as a freebie for the year and not collect fees. It's honestly about the best we can do. It's the most creative we can come up with. without running the traditional high school transportation, because the schedule honestly just does not provide for us to do that this year.
Donnie had something earlier?
A couple of things. First of all, thank you very much to you and Peter, because, I mean, if you think about it, it's day 15.
Right.
Think about all the changes that we've been able to make to adjust, the transportation process to meet the needs of more students. I'm completely for this, but I do think it's worth mentioning that I think our transportation in general every year is about $3 million plus that it costs us. And we take in 200,000 plus, 300,000 plus, somewhere in there, in terms of bus fees. Are we gonna be able to absorb that,
Yeah, do you have the, off the top of your head, the actuals?
So you're correct, between the big yellow buses and the special ed buses, yeah, it's about 1.8 million each, so close to 4 million. And then for the big bus fees, we usually collect between 350 and 400,000. What we did at the end of last year, we have some reserve in the transportation revolving fund. And I don't have the number right with me, but it's above 500,000.
okay.
So that was with the intent of, if something happened in a future year, would we have a cushion? So I can say for, this year, and, we do have that cushion.
Terrific, great, thank you.
I would think, I was just gonna say financially, I would think also, like, if we have extra funds at the end of the year,
Yep.
that we might offset the cost to our local budget,
Yep.
as opposed to the revolving fund, so that we can keep that little bit of a surplus. I just think it would be a very hard sell to continue to, charge
Completely
parents,
agree.
then
Yeah.
reimburse them, and
Completely
it's
agree.
2 days, not 5, and Joanna's gonna kill me.
I also want to make sure that, we don't get to the end of the school year
We,
and find ourselves, short or having to
Right.
make cuts because we didn't, plan appropriately.
no, we would
so-
just be having to acknowledge that we're gonna tap our reserve.
Right.
And I think if you're ever gonna do it, this is the year to do it in.
Absolutely.
None
It
of
was-
this is reimbursable through any COVID funding or anything else like that at this point?
The problem is, it's regular, you can only get reimbursed for things that you don't traditionally do, or typically do. And we always provide transportation, so if we were to add, 10 extra buses, we can't get them. But like, if we were to add 10 extra buses, then the additional 10 buses may be eligible. But we've always contracted for 29 buses. I really don't see us being eligible to
Even
get
if we
that.
had collected fees in the past and now we didn't because of COVID?
Yeah, I honestly don't.
Just try.
I mean, we can always ask,
Yeah.
but the other issue is, like, the money that we do have available to us, we've earmarked and targeted, like, we've had to add additional cleaners in. We've had to supplement our cleaning contractors. We've had extra custodians. We've been increasing technology purchases to try to help with the remote learning. So it would be like to pay for one to not do another. I'm comfortable, budget-wise overall where we're at. I think we're actually in good shape for the year. But as Joanna mentioned, I mean, this is the reason to have the reserve fund.
Right.
And I think we can utilize that for right now. As we develop other surpluses throughout the course of the year, typically we bring like one-time spending to you at the end of the year. We might recommend offsetting again this, leaving the money in the reserve fund and using one-time money to pay for this expense.
And then the other question I have is, again, to address some of these students who may not fall under our recommendations for transportation, I am worried that if the parents don't have transportation and they're students on IEPs, that, through the remote process, they may not be getting the extent of the services, that they should. Is there anything that we can do about that? And to Dennis's point, would they qualify for some type of transportation under the COVID, act? Because this would be different from what we would normally provide, because they would normally take a school bus, but they can't.
Yeah, I don't think so. So.
Trying again.
No,
Yeah, so-
we're all trying. I just think the issue would be if a student's on an IEP and transportation is required to get to their educational program, it's already in the service grid, it's in the back of the IEP, and we're providing specialized transportation.
Right.
So that already kind of holds.
Right.
If you had a child that has an IEP for, let's say it was like a speech only, or someone who's just receiving, say like literacy support or math support or something like that, that typically wouldn't qualify for regular transportation. We're basically, cutting it down at this point to the mile, everyone, K to 8.
Right.
So that really is gonna be very encompassing. once we, you know, kind of have that factor built in, because the other issue is, say, when we're doing this mapping, the mapping system doesn't have the special education data for privacy reasons, so
Right.
we can't say, you know, how many students live within a mile that happen to be on an IEP that aren't getting transportation to
Right.
figure out how to adjust the numbers.
Okay.
But if this, again, pans out, and I think this really is a step in the right direction, if this pans out and there's still room, again, we could look at the mileage requirements. Do we knock it down? You know, have we heard a need from families that are having, you know, the issue getting the child to school and they're not going? We could potentially present that in the future.
Okay. And so in the interim, can these families reach out to their school building administrators just to kind of like a red flag, like I'd really like to get my student to school, I just don't have transportation, so that we can, you know, maybe
Yeah,
factor this in?
I think, I mean, if the transportation is really prohibiting the student from coming to school, I would have to think that if they've chosen full remote, but when the survey goes out to say, you know, would you like to consider moving to, to the hybrid, you know, we could potentially ask, you know, is transportation a barrier to this?
Yeah.
And then be able to follow up.
Yeah, I think that would be
But we
a
could
good
keep it at the
idea.
school level, where, you know, the schools are identifying the information. Again, they have the contact with the family and figuring out what they can do.
Yeah, I really think it's important that we do go through the schools and
Yeah.
that the families feel comfortable reaching out.
Right.
Even, you know, I mean, really honestly, you know, sometimes I think families who are struggling with poverty, they're not thinking about filling out a survey. They're just trying to think about getting from one day to the next, and whatever doors we can open, you know, to them, to encourage them to give us the information so that we can better provide services, you know, so much the better.
And, I'm
Good.
sorry, you know, and you know yourself too, like staff have also like flagged for us.
Absolutely.
Hey, I'm really concerned about so-and-so, you know, he's fully remote.
Right, that's really our best resource right there.
Right, you know, is there something we can do to try to help this student get to be
Right.
in person? So, you know, that's happening as well now too,
Good.
you know.
Other thoughts on this
Thank
before we?
Yeah, do you want to say something, John? Sorry.
No, go ahead. Nope.
What Donna just said in terms of special ed students, I think it's also very important for the EL because quite a few are remote. And we know that transportation is a big problem for a lot of EL families. So it would be important to try to make sure that the teachers in the EL program are aware that we now have further availability
Yep.
for transportation, so that they can communicate that out to the families, because transportation does tend to be a big issue for them.
Sure.
And I think that this is the more, you know, when we were talking with Representative Govea about the DESI guidelines, and Donna was asking her question, I think that the DESI guidelines wanted us to bring in person as many of the special ed and the EL students as possible. The problem is that COVID has restrictions
Right.
that you can't overcome without money and funding and so on, and greater resources
Right.
to really bring these families in. And so whatever we can do to let these teachers know that this is now available so that they can communicate it,
Sure.
it would be really important.
John, do you have something?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I think that this is a great plan. You know, the more we can offer to families at this point, you know, the easier we can make their lives, I think the better. So, my question is, do we need to vote, since we did change the policy? Do we need to take a vote on whether we're gonna offer these expanded?
What policy did you change?
Well, we went to the only 2 miles, K to 6, and then
Right.
we added on, we took a vote to that. Do we need to take another vote to
I do think you.
expand?
Yeah, because you're basically
Yeah,
expanding.
right,
So
that's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, yes, I would take a vote on both fronts, because your vote stands now, Joanna had the 3 bullets up
Right.
there. It's really restricted to, you know, K to 6. So I think it's important to capture the 7 and 8,
Yeah.
and also the whole restriction going down to the 1 mile. So I do think that's important. And then the high school really wasn't on the table before, so I think just conceptually voting to approve the, kind of the shuttle run service and allow us to kind of advertise and start pushing that, I think really students and families are going to be happy.
You good with the motion, Don?
I'm ready.
All right.
I recommend the school Committee expand bus registration to grades K through 8 over 1 mile from the assigned school with no bus fee charged for this 2021 school year.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Any further discussion? Do we have to roll call this one?
It does,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, Donna?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, we'll take a second motion.
I can't talk, I can't think. I recommend the school committee provide a shuttle bus service to the high school with no fee charged for the 2021 school year.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Donna?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Great.
All right, thank you very
Right,
much.
thank you.
We'll be able to report on
Good
that
plan.
going forward. But no, I appreciate Joanna and Peter have done a great job kind of working and crunching those numbers, so it's been great. Next thing for you, just on fall athletics, we talked a little bit earlier about some of the effects on the students and whatnot. We did have a situation last week, and this is going to go into our talking about community level data, where there's basically 11 teams in the Merrimack Valley that our athletes typically compete against. Going into last Wednesday, 2 of the 11 communities happened to already be in the red. There was discussion about, do we play communities that are red? Do we not? Do we use the 3-week averaging to figure out if we should play communities or not? Are there certain sports that, should play even if they're in the red, not in the red? So all the athletic directors, meet regularly to talk about this. From time to time, the high school principals are involved to figure out kind of standardization across schools. Superintendents are not typically too involved in this. But last week what happened on Wednesday night, in addition to the 2 out of the 11 that were red, 5 additional communities went red. So now 7 out of the 11 communities went red, and it was causing angst within everyone. So the athletic directors were feeling it, the principals were starting to feel a little bit. There was, there's some agreement, some disagreement with regard to, what should happen and what shouldn't happen. So the superintendents of the districts got together to kind of have a call to see, not trying to overstep anyone, but just kind of get everyone on the same page and to, long story short, provide a little bit of time to figure out what we should do and try to have a united front, because oftentimes you don't want to have certain communities get singled out for different reasons. It can be a hotly political issue in towns, as I'm sure a lot of you know. So, long story short, what we agreed to do for last week, until we could get a better handle on this, and we have a follow-up meeting on Thursday, we agreed to basically not hold competitions for the week, with the exception of the 2 sports that had been identified as the least, the low-risk sports, which were basically across the board, because we didn't want to single out the red communities from the yellow communities. Golf and cross-country. So those golf and cross-country took place over this past week, regardless of whether you were red or yellow. And I want to provide the rationale for that, because if you were in a sport that didn't get to play, you might be upset that, say, golf got to play. Golf, as an example, was a sport that was able to basically do a different kind of match play. So if Chelmsford was playing Andover, for argument's sake, or Chelmsford was playing Central, like whoever, the 3 or 4 kids from Chelmsford who were competing would basically tee off and go out as a group of the 3 or 4 Chelmsford kids to play the hole. After they, hit their shot and were approaching the green, then the Andover kids would tee off. So they were able to space the teams so that there wasn't really contact between the teams. They still played, they recorded their scores, and they competed. A similar thing can happen with cross-country, where the kids basically go out, I keep calling them kids, I'm sorry, the students basically go out in packs of 10. So you would have like 10 of the Chelmsford runners go out, then they would lag it, and a few minutes later, 10 of the Andover kids would go out, and it's all based on time. It's not actual live, kind of competition, so they could keep the kids separate. We as a group all felt that that was safe to continue. It wasn't going to cause major havoc within the sports. That's why those sports got to play for this last week. What we decided to do was field hockey, soccer, some of the schools that were doing volleyball, basically push that off for a week so that we could see what's going to happen Wednesday. There's a chance that, again, based on just the statistics and looking at the numbers, there's a chance that another 2 of the 11 communities may go red. We could potentially be one of those 2 communities based on the way the data reads. Under a different scenario, there's an option for 3 communities to go back to yellow. So what we basically needed to do is buy a little bit of time to figure out as a group, this is the 11 teams, you know, are we gonna hold to, you know, 1 week of red means that you don't go to that community to play? Are we gonna do the 3-week averaging like the state is indicating we should do? And this is all up for discussion right now. So we basically have another meeting on Thursday to kind of look at this. And each community is at a different place. There are some communities that are basically saying they'd rather opt out of sports this fall and push this whole season to that, I forget the name of the season. Fall 2, kind of like the later season, and do that. There'll be a discussion about that. There'll be a discussion about whatever schools are comfortable moving forward, you know, allowing that to happen. I don't know where that conversation is going to fall, but this is all, you know, kind of happening this week. So I do know, again, oftentimes people hear, you know, pros and cons about sports and what's going on. I just wanted to fill you in on our kind of decision-making process, where we're at. We'll know more, obviously, tomorrow night when we see the state's test results. We're going to talk about that in a couple minutes. But as a competition level, no one is trying to take away the opportunity for our kids to compete. I think under all these different scenarios, even if you're red, districts want teams to be able to continue to practice amongst themselves and prepare for competition. We're just trying to figure out a way for it to be equitable, to make the decisions about whether we should play, shouldn't play, keeping safety in mind, because none of us want to see everything that we're doing to keep school going during the day be impacted by, say, whether it's a sports competition or it's an extracurricular or whatever in the after hours. So that is ongoing, but again, just wanted to put that out there. We all, as superintendent, signed on to the statement, and it was issued last week. But that was the behind-the-scenes rationale for why we had that. And we also didn't want to have the pressure be on the principals or even the ADs, because it's a very difficult position to be in if you're in those roles. We as a group just decided to kind of step up and say, across the districts, this is what we're going to agree to, and that's what we ended up implementing. So wanted you to have that context.
Any questions about that? Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next item, I know Representative Covea talked a little bit this evening about some funding and whatnot for COVID-related activities. As a district, we've actually received 3 additional funding sources that we don't typically have, and I've asked Joanna to just kind of outline those for you, just so that you know the buckets of money that we're utilizing this year. It kind of tied in with the conversation from the representative earlier, so I just want to make sure you all knew what those amounts were to set the context.
Thank you. So the 3 new funding sources are the one for $311,545, and that's called CARES Act. You'll hear the term ESSER. And Fund Code 113. Grants are identified by a fund code. This one's multi-year and can go out very far into the first quarter of fiscal year 23, which is great. So Dr. Hirsch wrote the application, and then right now it's to fund, you know, technology and remote learning, professional development. But this one will most likely amend, and it'll most likely be for our needs for fiscal 22, because we might not need to tap these funds in fiscal 21 because we have these other 2 funding sources. And this is the only one that extends out that far. The next one is the COVID Relief School Reopening Grant, Fund Code 102, and that's the big one, 1.1 million. And that's the $225 per pupil or whatever. This one ends December 30th. So it's very short-term grant, and this is the one we want to spend down. And again, Dr. Hirsch wrote this grant, and Dr. Lang talked about some of the items that it's all going to fund: the additional custodial cleaning services through our contractors and through our own employees, cleaning supplies, any other PPE, and then instructional technology like the Clear Touch panels. And then the third one is this Remote Learning Technology Essentials Grant. Fund Code 118 for $259,000. This one is also very short-term. It ends December 30th this year. And Dr. Hirsch and Bill Silver wrote this, and it is going to fund Chromebooks for more students. In addition to the schools, the town did receive some funding last year and this year from FEMA as well as the CARES Act, and that has funded some of our items primarily from the end of last year, our PPE, some new custodial equipment, some cleaning supplies, some signage, air purifiers, the new filters, hand washing stations. So we're working with the town to make sure we're taking advantage of this funding and staying in the scope of the grants and what they can fund.
Great.
When will we find out
Yeah, that was a question I had.
Find out about what?
whether or not we got these grants?
Oh, no, we did get them.
Oh, it says that we had submitted a grant application, so I wasn't sure if we.
Oh,
was
their
already
allocation, their allocation grants, they're not competitive.
Oh, okay.
So this is
okay.
money that we received to help with the start of
fantastic.
school and all of that.
Oh, okay.
Well, I just wanted you to have the, kind of the numbers and also the time frame. Like that first one, because again, we just don't know what fiscal '22 is gonna be like. Where our budget's sufficient for fiscal '21 that we're in now, so we're probably gonna push that so that that could be a little cushion and help us if we run into trouble with fiscal '22. The other two, like the bigger one I mentioned earlier, we've had to amend our contracts with our cleaning companies because they're coming in to provide extra cleaning services in the buildings. We've had to hire some extra custodial staff, even our own, to do extra hours of cleaning between the different cohorts. We've made some technology purchases to support the remote learning. So those are all, they will be spent down by December 31st. It's just that first one that won't. I just wanted you to have a sense of the dollar amounts that we were dealing with in these grants. But they're all allocation grants, so they're not competitive.
Oh, thank you. That's fantastic.
Question on this first one?
Yep.
It says it's for technology instructional aids. When it talks about technology instructional aids, is it only technology itself, you know, microphones, things like that, aids, or is it also for personnel?
When Dr. Hirsch wrote this, we put it in the staff line. Oh.
I think he's lost his mask.
It's embarrassing.
So it was part-time staff.
It includes staff.
Yep.
And see if I understood this. This is used up, or we?
No, this is the one, because this is the only one that extends out 2 years, and because these other ones end in December, our strategy would be to likely use this next fiscal year, since we don't know what the funding is going to be available next fiscal year. And then we have the opportunity to amend the grant if our needs change in fiscal '22.
Okay.
So if we find, you know, what we wrote today doesn't apply to next fiscal year, we can amend it and have this extra 300,000 help us.
Okay, thank you.
Are we running into any problems, getting some of these materials? Because I know that there's a lot of things on back order.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing. I know we ordered Chromebooks.
Right.
Where are we in that process?
Right.
Are we getting any closer to getting them?
No.
No. Okay.
Do we have enough for now, though? Is
Yeah,
it like
so-
barely? I mean, we.
Yeah, so two things. I mean, we all want this stuff. Our delivery dates just keep getting pushed off. So we were hoping for early fall. Now we're in the November, December timeframe to try to get them. What we did is we basically depleted all of our carts that we have in the schools. We
Yeah.
broke them all down. We distributed those to all the students, K-12, who needed them at this point. So when that was done, we did wave after wave after wave. So now that all the students are done and they all have devices that they need, we went back and took the rest of the stock that we had and deployed that to staff within the buildings that needed devices. So most of our teachers had devices. Some had desktops, not laptops, but a lot of our support staff, paraprofessionals and whatnot, didn't have devices. So those are now being deployed to that staff. The librarians at the schools are checking them out to staff. So we're not in bad shape. I mean, people are covered at this point. We would just like to get this newer technology in. So we're still on hold for that. We're on hold for student devices, about 2,000, and I don't know, a few hundred staff devices to be able to supplement what we have. At some point this fall, Bill will come and do a little overview for us, but we're beholden to the vendors at this point for that delivery. I'm at least happy that all of our kids have devices at this point. We're not hearing anything from people who don't have devices. Our families who have fully remote students who didn't have a need, or they had their own device at home, who didn't request one, we're very appreciative to that, because that would have just put additional demand on us. But, no, we've at least been able to take care of all of our students who needed devices. The other thing that we have been able to do, which I think is going to be very welcomed, is we received great feedback on those ClearTouch panels at the schools. So we only had them in grades 2, 3, 4 at the elementary school, and then 5, 6 at the middle school, because that's where our 101 initiative was. We've been able to go back and actually provide them for all of our K and 1 classrooms and our 7 and 8 classrooms. So the vendor's actually in the district this week assembling and putting those out. So that was a pretty quick turnaround. We only gave them the nod mid-September, or early September, when we knew this was happening. So I think those teachers are going to be thrilled when they get those devices. And then obviously when they get a new Chromebook as well, that's going to be welcomed.
How short are we on Chromebooks for staff at this point? Paraprofessionals and teachers. I mean, I know the teachers have devices, it could be a desktop, but we talked in the last meeting that Chromebook would be ideal.
The Chromebook is ideal. I do not believe we have a staff member at this point that does not have access to a device. I would have to find out if people still have desktops as opposed to the Chromebooks. I can do that for a future meeting for you.
So, are we close to getting them? Well, let me put it, is it in the next wave?
It's as soon as the order comes in.
Okay.
We're at the point where we've okayed issuing every single device we have in the district, whether it was a student device to a staff member if they needed or whatnot. So that's out there. We're literally just waiting for the shipment at this point. And at that point, we can replenish all of our carts, for the future. We can outfit staff with a device if they only had a desktop and they needed a laptop, things like that.
I mean, do you even need cards right now?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Do you even need cards right now?
No, but for next year, like if we go back to school full-time, at least we'll be sitting on the stock.
When we go
When we
back.
go
Not
back
after
to
school. When we go back.
I think you guys are a little more confident than I am, but.
But no, I mean, we'll be able to replenish whenever we do.
I think it's extremely important to make sure that the staff, even if they have both, a hard desktop plus the Chromebook, fully okay, because they may be remote. We had several teachers remote at the high school these past 2 weeks. Suddenly if you're told you're going to be remote, you're not going to go to school and go pick up your desktop and bring it home and then bring your desktop back and so on. So I think it's extremely important that they have access to that. And then the next question is, how old is your piece of technology? Is it fully functional? And making sure that they have a fully functional newer piece of technology that in their hands to use, I think would be very important. And you said that you're going to have Mr. Silver Bill present to us at some point.
Yes, he'll come at some point this fall and give an update on technology.
I think it would be important to know that kind of inventory and, what's in the hands of who, and making sure everybody is equipped.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. It's just a matter of physically getting your hands on the stuff at this point, and we're all struggling to do that.
No, I understand that only too well. I'm glad that, that we're on top of this and taking a look at it. I just want to make sure that, as I said, that we're giving our staff everything that they need. This would include our paraprofessionals, because I would imagine it's kind of hard to be effective in the classroom, working with students if you can't see what they're working on because you're trying to maintain 6 feet of distance. And I want to make sure that the students are getting everything that they need in the classroom, because we provided the teachers with the resources that they need in order to be able to do that. So, I understand what you're saying, but I do think it's really important that we stay on top of this to the best of our ability. But yeah, I get it. I mean, every school district is in the same boat.
Right.
And the Chromebooks don't last forever. They just don't, so, I'm sure we've had to replace a few already, so.
Any other questions on COVID funding before we move to the next item?
Sure.
Okay.
Next item, just a quick update for you. I know we talked about this at either the previous or the meeting before, setting up some focus groups to hear from staff about how the first few weeks of the school year have gone. Maria and Jeff have been the school committee reps on those sessions. We had elementary at the end of last week, and then we had middle school yesterday. So we have 2 of the 3 done, and then we have the high school on Thursday afternoon this week. So we've gotten actually very good response from staff at the different levels, so people are logging on to their particular level. I thought the conversations have been excellent to at least kind of hear what some of the concerns are in the field. People have been talking about some of the pros and what they have thought has been successful this year. We want to try to open up opportunities for staff to be able to share amongst themselves, either by grade or by level or across schools in the district, of like some of the tricks that they found that's really they're finding helpful that works, and then also some of the areas that they're struggling with, and try to figure out as a district, how we can better support them. So after we have the 3 sessions, we'll be able to sit down and kind of look at some of the themes that emerged, figure out what type of supports people might need as the year goes on. But I've actually been very happy with the participation. It's been excellent. We'll know more Thursday after the high school when we have that one, but the first 2 I thought have gone very well.
Jeff?
I just want to say I'm very impressed that the teachers' top priority of the students, that has come through. I think if they need, whatever they need, it's always what's best for their students. And I think it's amazing how much work and prep they're putting in. Some of the teachers are teaching a new grade level that they've never taught before. Those of us who taught and had to go remote know how difficult that is, because you have to change everything around, and teachers are doing, hybrid students in front of them and then the students at home prepping. I'm impressed with how they care about their colleagues, that they're concerned for their colleagues and all. And I think, and Maria, J. Linda, I don't know if you agree, that the emotion that you come through is that they're dedicated and they care and they want to do the best they possibly can. And it's difficult because this is a whole new world and it's a whole new situation. And, it's hard to say to people that dedicated, do the best you can. We understand this is new, and do the best you can when they're so used to doing, so much.
Striving for perfection.
Right, and
Yep.
it's just, you can hear it, and they're putting in the time, as they did without this. I mean, I think people don't realize, they think a teacher drives home and your job's done. The amount of time, while you're driving home, you're thinking about your job. And, the time that they put in normally, I think it's been increased. And, everything, the concerns and everything was, how can I do my job better? How can I be supported? And how can I best serve my students and my colleagues? And I think that, for me, that came through loud and clear. And I've always been impressed, my years in this district, but even more so now, that in these difficult times. And I just want them to know that we do hear them and we are listening.
I actually listen to my son's teacher all day, so yeah, no, I agree with you. She does a great job.
I think that we've heard a lot of really positive feedback from parents about, the amount of time and effort that is obvious that the teachers are putting in.
Right.
The one thing I guess I would ask, the committee to consider is this sustainable?
Right.
And I say this as, as a teacher who's only 7 days in, and it feels like it's been 7 months.
Yep.
Can they keep this pace up? And what do we have to do to support them? And I agree with Jeff. The students are at the forefront of their concern. I think we have to make sure that we are doing our job around being concerned about our staff, because everything really radiates from the teachers. I mean, really. The students are going to benefit from well-supported teachers who have the resources that are necessary. So I just think we have to keep on striving for that as a committee, I really do, because this is a grueling pace right now.
I mean, I had trouble with just one college class last year. I can't imagine what people are going through.
It's,
I was going to say,
So,
given the makeup of this committee, I think the staff can be assured, we understand, because, we're some of us are in the trenches ourselves, and it's not easy, you know, and, you know, even if you've been teaching 30 years, whatever, you know, you're doing something new, and it's a lot of prep work and, you know, a lot of different ways of correcting things, so we definitely understand that, you know, the staff are working their hearts out right now, and you know, we definitely will keep them.
And you know, whatever we need to do, I mean, I think that sometimes, you know, we talk about allocating resources in terms of technology but if there's other things, you know, that we can be creative around, in terms of, you know, providing support, you know, beyond the cleaning supplies and technology and classroom supplies and things like that, you know, I think we should be open to that. And I'm not saying that I know what that is,
Right.
but, you know, just make sure that, you know, like I said, that we're doing what we can to take care of the staff so they can keep the kids at the forefront of what it is that they're doing.
We've only participated in 2 groups so far. There's one more to go, and I want to listen to those comments, and we're going to have some way of making sure that we process this input. First, what Jeff said is very true. I am humbled by what staff has been able to accomplish. And their commitment is the student. You can hear it in all the comments that they're making. There have been some very positive feedback about the support that they're receiving, which is very nice to hear. But the sustainability is probably what concerns me the most. And I know this myself from returning to work in my own field and having to think of creative ways to deal with clients and their needs. Teachers have to deal not only with the needs of the students, but also their families, also their own personal families and their concerns. So there are many things here in play. Another thing I'd really like to stress is, from what I've been hearing, people have been finding ways to collaborate, which I am so happy to hear, from having been a parent within the system for all these years, to hear some of the things that are happening in collaboration that technology in many ways has enabled, and that they feel more comfortable doing it, maybe because of that technology and feeling comfortable with it, is also tremendous. And I think in the end, what it's going to do for our district will be amazing things. They're already doing amazing things because we provide a good education and want to keep at that level. Whether all of this effort they're putting in right now, which is tremendous and for which I am personally grateful. I think many parents are very grateful for it. That they can sustain this is what's going to be important. And every day after I come out of one of these sessions, I try to think of ways that I can come back to the group and maybe provide some ideas from looking outside in, which is very important, I think, to do at this time. So I want to thank them. I think it's been amazing. We've gotten some really important input, and they've been honest, which is extremely important if we want to keep this up. And personally, thank you. I'm enjoying being part of the working groups.
I want to thank Jeff and Maria for volunteering to be on those and spending the time with them. Yeah.
I think my favorite line is, to a person, they were just so happy to be in front of students again.
Yes.
Yeah, that came through, and I think the other thing that I mentioned on both calls at different times is that we've been receiving, obviously, a lot of email from parents around the start of the school year, almost to a T. I mean, every single email starts out with, "We are so thankful, you know, and appreciative of all the staff's hard work, and we know this is crazy, you know, it's, you know, unusual times or whatnot. You know, here's some things to think about." It's not really coming in negative, right? It's really appreciating everything that the staff is doing, realizing that this isn't a regular time. And I think that's the other thing where a lot of this is different. You know, it's going to take some time to get used to. the expectations have to be shifted around, what your work looks like, how it's gonna get done. But everyone really, for the most part, has been very kind of open to that. But the parents, I have to say, have been very just appreciative. I think even we've gotten a couple emails, I think they've gone to the whole group about, like, even the change from like the spring online learning to the fall online learning. And that's been great to see too. But no, we've gotten good feedback. Go ahead, Jeff.
And the other thing, I'm impressed with the fully remote teachers and the creativity and the things they've come up with, that I think they'll be able to, and there has been sharing. I mean, as Maria said that, and I know
Right.
you and Linda have asked people, to share things, and, you've asked them for different ideas that you can pass on. But, the remote teachers, it's different now for them, and I think, and again, it's the same thing. Everyone's trying to be as creative, and it's incredible the amount of work they're doing.
In terms of parents, when you said that, Dr. Lang, I'm thinking of one email in particular, and I think it was addressed to the entire committee, which was simply an outright thank you.
Yeah.
I saw the happiness in my child's face today, enjoys being with a teacher, enjoys being with a class. That's all the comment was about.
Right.
It wasn't about anything else. It was just to let us know that. And I think that just speaks so much about, how parents feel, who truly appreciate what's being done. And teachers should know that.
I agree.
I've read some interesting things recently, because our Teach Point goals are due soon. And, about being our professional development goal is going to be about maintaining good mental health. And, we joke about it, but I think that there's really something to it. And I think that, like I said, I really can't emphasize enough, this has been a big lift. It's usually, really very busy at the beginning of any school year, but this year in particular. So I think that, as I said, whatever we can do, I think that you have our support.
No, I appreciate that. We'll get through the third session and then have some time, Jeff, Maria, Linda and I and others who are on the call can kind of sit and just, compare notes and
Yep.
see if there's kind of common themes that have emerged and, bring them back.
Yep.
We all want to support everyone this year as very best we can. I appreciate people's flexibility and willing to just kind of share their stories, and so there'll be further follow-up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want people to know, I'm taking extensive notes during these meetings. I will share my notes with you if you want, Dr. Hirsch, if you need it. But I am taking these notes, and I know that it's not only mental, I'm writing it down, because I think there are common things, and they're important for us to
I have
address.
notes
And
too.
look
I
at-
just
look
want
at
you to
Chuck.
know that
So-
even though my picture's not
Yep.
up there, that I am paying attention and
It's-
taking notes.
It's terrific that, that people are taking the time to really participate in it. And this is like until 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. I mean, we've had long sessions
Right.
that they've given their time.
That's great.
So,
Good. Switching into just a couple of other topics under number 3, we talked a little bit earlier about the learning models and adjustments. So this is work that we're now kind of taking a look at in the district. A couple of things we have to address, and again, it might be K-12, it might be done by level as well, but, we kind of have a half-day model now. What would it look like to move to a full-day model, even with the 4 days a week? And as we further talk about this, pros and cons to both, right? So, one thing that kind of came up as we were talking a little bit today was that, the staff really appreciate having, when they can, the second adult in the class to help out. But if we moved back to a regular traditional rotating schedule, the specialists would actually be in regular sessions. They wouldn't be available to be the second adult. So there's some kind of give and take. I think, staff are finally kind of getting settled into the schedule and the model we have now. Parents are as well. What would a change look like, and how would that have to be messaged and communicated and whatnot? So there are a lot of different steps that we're looking at around this. We also have to have, unfortunately not in the back of our minds, but the plan for if we had to move fully remote and what that's going to look like, again, just based on health data and trends. So I want you to know that that work is ongoing as well. And we'll be able to report out, future updates at meetings with regard to like those dates and changes and things like that. But I just wanted to flag those two things for you. Third, I know we've all gotten a lot of emails about the specialist schedules, particularly at the middle school, because we're not hearing about it at the high school because they're doing a rotating schedule, but the middle schools, they have kind of the traditional elementary schedule where the day piece has really been the academic piece, and then the specials have been meeting in the afternoon. And it's about half the meeting time that they normally would, so some of the schedules have been a little bit constricted. They have taken a look at that schedule, and again, this is only our third week, so we've been trying to make incremental improvements as we go and little tweaks to even logistics. But they're going to reutilize that Wednesday afternoon, which was kind of unscheduled time at this point at the two middle schools, to add additional specials into the schedule. This was actually requested, obviously, of parents, but we have staff also that want to see more time with their kids. So we're able to add a couple of extra blocks in the fine arts programming with bands, and I believe it might
Language.
have been, well, I know language for sure, but I think there might have been an art block in there too, because sometimes I almost feel like you can't make anyone happy with what we're doing, but we're trying to make as many people happy as we can. But we've been hearing from a contingent of, let's just call them fine and performing arts. So it's music, it's art, it's chorus and whatnot. We also have our world language teachers, that want to be able to have more access to kids. So we are reutilizing those Wednesday afternoons. Tomorrow happens to be a PD day, so it's a Wednesday, so it won't be starting tomorrow. But I know the schools are communicating, and this is really only going to affect the two middle schools. This doesn't affect elementary or the high school. Next Wednesday that will start, and we've gotten a couple of thank you emails about that. So I'm thinking that we're going to give it a go, see how this works. And I just want the viewing audience to know that we're trying to be responsive. It just does take a little bit of time to kind of get the school year going, to work out some of the kinks, and we're going to continue to make improvements as we go. Obviously, if we ever were able to move back to the full day as well and go back to a regular kind of rotating schedule, again, that has an upside would be you could have more of these scheduled classes. The downside is the support in the rooms and staffing. So there's a lot to be done, but I think, that adjustment to the middle school specialist schedule that you'll see a week from tomorrow, I think is going to be welcomed.
We'll be looking at the elementary school as well?
For,
Same thing, increasing the amount of time with specialists.
they were already doing the 5 days a week. It was the middle
okay.
school that wasn't doing Wednesdays with the specials.
Right.
So the elementaries already have specials on Wednesdays.
Okay.
The issue we're bumping up into is really just the time.
The time, right.
The day that they have there. Not to say that they're not looking to make tweaks and schedule and whatnot, but they already have 5 full days of programming going there. We just don't have the flexibility that they have at the middle school level.
I think there's a lot of variables that we obviously have to take into account. I mean, to tell you the truth, I didn't expect for us to go to yellow this soon. That came as a little bit of a surprise to me. But, given that, do we have a timeline for, moving from half-day to full day, or when, what is the point that we're looking at? Because I think we do have to have time to have a good plan in place for both the half-day to full day, and I also think we also need to know what the target number is for full remote. But how are we doing this? How are we, the full remote is, I think, a little bit more out of our control, or in our control, in that, we hit that threshold, so we go full remote. But the full day to, the half day to full day, what are we doing, how are we determining when that will happen?
So there's two things going on.
Yeah.
There are even, implications with going to fully remote, because we've got to talk about, do we implement the schedule that we have now? Do we make, changes even to that schedule to
Yep.
try to have more of a rotation?
That's
So
fair.
that's all, kind of being discussed. What we're wrestling with is, do we align a switch in model, say half-day to full day, with the switch in learning model? So if someone wanted to go, like those transition periods, which happen to be sometime in early to mid-November.
Okay,
So if someone, because we'd want to be able to tell parents what they're buying into,
right.
because that could have an impact on someone if they were currently remote and they were considering going fully, not fully hybrid, but if they were considering going hybrid, and now the day was going to go from, say, a truncated day to a full day, that might work for some, it might not work for others. So we're internally kind of just talking about, do we actually align those learning model changes to an actual switch in schedule if we were going to, so we could advertise and people would know what they're buying into. I think I'll have a better definitive timeline for you with the next school committee meeting,
Okay.
because again, there's just so many different implications. I do not see it happening in October. I mean, this would be like a November, December-ish timeframe.
Okay.
I think the other thing that we're just running up against is, as we're trying to watch this data too, if it ever looked like we were eventually going to be going fully remote because of data, do we want to be doing all of these different changes right now? Because that would add just like another layer on top of things. So I think we need to be prepared for both. We need to be prepared for if we ever went fully remote, but we also need to be prepared for, do we maintain the course and just do the change from learning model, or do we do a switch also to the learning model, the length of day when we're doing the learning model change?
And, you know, I mean, I obviously think it's a wise way to approach this. I am concerned, you know, and maybe that phased-in approach that you had mentioned, you know, might be worth considering, because I know that we are getting some feedback from especially our youngest learners that,
Right.
you know, trying to maintain, you know, focus on the computer for an
Right.
extended period of time is tough. And I really, again, encourage parents to reach out to the teachers. You know, if you've got a little one falling asleep in front of the computer, shut the computer off. You know, talk to the teacher and just say, you know, I mean, don't persist in making the poor pup sit there. And, you know, not that parents are doing that, but I think that they feel compelled to try and have their child, you know, participate in as much of the school day as possible. I think we have to let parents tell us, you know, what their kids need and make sure that they communicate that with the teacher. So if the child needs to leave a little early because they're really exhausted, that's what we have to do.
The communication is the key point. I think, and I do think this happens in the majority of cases, but if a student is struggling, you know, the parent's first line of contact really should be that classroom teacher.
Yeah, right.
You know, try to work through what they can. The classroom teachers are very talented, obviously. If they're perceiving of an issue, they can involve the school counselor, they can involve school admin to try to work things through. That communication is key. I really do think it's happening in most cases. If it's not, or if people have concerns, that's where it needs to start,
Yeah, no, I agree.
you know?
But,
The
you
other-
know, I do worry about these little guys, though, you know.
It is. I think when we look at it, though, too, I mean, even if we were to make changes to, say, schedule a day or whatnot, we could do wholesale K-12. We could also look, like I said, like level. I will say the elementary is probably the hardest. It might be the most necessary, but it is the hardest to pull off because of staffing. So that is just another complicating factor because of the number of supports that you need with regard to, you know, paras and aides and things like that. It's not quite as easy to pull off, say, as the high school would be. Because if you think about it now, the high school's already rotating.
Right.
You know, to have the kids stay and have lunch and rotate for one more class would be easier than taking the elementary, because now you've got the core staff and you've got the special staff supporting different points of the day. It'd be a little bit more complex there. Not to say we're not looking at it, it's just not as easy to pull off as, say, the high school would be.
John, you had something?
No, I was just going to say that, just to kind of, I'm not going to use the word, but just to kind of move off that point.
Dovetail.
Yeah, so you used it. Do first, like, young elementary kids cry in the classroom on occasion? I've never been a teacher. Yeah, well, they definitely do it at home, too. So I've seen some crying over trying to get my son back to the computer. So I definitely understand. And I had to participate in a gym class, otherwise he wasn't going to do it. So,
How'd you do?
me, he did better than I did, that's for sure. But no, it is challenging though. I mean, it's tough for the younger kids to keep them focused. I mean, like my dog's in the house, so you know, which is actually kind of
It
positive.
does put a lot on the parents, too.
It does.
Absolutely.
So I actually work on my couch and I watch, and when he needs help, my wife does a lot of it, but like I just run over if I can help.
This brings up a point about parental input and also student input, because I think that you will get some pretty good feedback and input from high school level students and even from middle schoolers who themselves can tell you whether it's too much, too little, or, you know, how it is. So we're going through these groups right now, these working groups. At what point are we going to be reaching out to, parents and for input and students? How are we doing this?
Yeah, I mean, we need to get through this. We just have limited bandwidth with everything going on. We need to work through the staff first. I would then see a next natural step would be to get some parent feedback after, you know, again, it's only week 3, but after like a month or so of doing this, we could work to put together some kind of a parent instrument, a survey to be able to get some district-wide data, then, you know, dig in a little bit deeper if we need to. I think I'd be afraid to just hold like a general focus group for parents because of, you know, we don't know the numbers that would come, what the groups they'd be representing would be. I think if we started with a district-wide survey to get the data, maybe we could pull out the top 3 to 4 to 5 like focus areas, and if we then needed to have like an actual focus group around those topics, we could. So I can see that happening between now and, you know, maybe Thanksgiving timeframe. Students are a little different. Obviously, we can get data from the high school students, and we do. I think they obviously do kind of report in what's going well, what's not going well. You get some data from the middle school kids, and we really don't get a lot of data from the elementary school kids. We really rely heavily on the parents to provide that for us. But we could figure out, you know, survey instrument-wise, well, maybe, you know, I can talk to the principals of the high school and the middle schools and figure out if they already have natural student groups that they might be able to just get some feedback through, to just kind of inform what they're doing from the student perspective.
Because I can tell you that even at that age, they're tired too. It is a different way of learning, and it requires a lot of concentration to, so by the end of a day, they are very tired. I think what I've heard is many of the teachers are very cognizant of it and are watching the homework assignments and so on for that age group. This is what I'm experiencing personally, and I don't know the middle and the elementary right now and as much, except for the work groups that we're getting the input on. But I think it would be important as well. Of course, people reach out to us with emails and so on and that type of input.
Sure.
But it would be good also just generally to be able to know what, you know, what the reaction is.
Okay.
Okay.
It's pretty insightful. I had a chance to talk to a group of students that I did a field trip with last Friday from my district. And it was really interesting to listen to what they had to say about, you know, learning. And some of them talked about some of the physical difficulties they have by the end of the day, headaches and things like that, just not feeling well from being on the computer all day long. Also about how much they miss their teachers. You know, and some of them said, I would just come back to school just to see this one teacher. I just come back for this one class because,
Yes.
you know, I think that the connections are very strong and very meaningful.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We touched upon this a little bit earlier tonight, and this is the next one, kind of around use of community-level data to guide the learning model selection. So there were 2 different things I included in your packet, and I just wanted to talk about this evening and get a little bit of feedback on. So the first one is the Department of Ed. They have, I'm just going to, you don't have to read that, I'm just going to click on it to get a graphic to come up. But the department has actually now started to record all of the different positive COVID cases that we have district to district, so we have to report that to them. And then, as I indicated, I actually want to take that data a little bit further and track who we qualify as a close contact and their test results and whatnot to see how our efforts to keep people safe are working. The DESE is actually posting this up on their website each week, so you can go to the page, and then you can actually click on the spreadsheet here, and it basically goes district by district through how many cases you have for a particular week. So I'm just curious, again, we've been very open and transparent about what's been happening here. We send the letter to the school, the whole school, if someone tests positive. We send letters to the individual classroom if someone tests positive. I'm wondering from the committee standpoint, do you think it would be advantageous to either put some kind of a link on our website to say a report like this, or for us to generate some kind of our own little report that would help the community or people in schools be able to track, you know, how many cases we have. If we were to do that, I'd probably want to take it that step further, though, and be able to report on, you know, close contacts we identify, you know, how many positive, negative cases, just to tell the full story, because I think the story is actually a good story. And if it weren't a good story, I'd still want to tell it because we'd need to be able to make some changes to that. So I'm just curious to know, as a group, you don't have to decide tonight, but if that's something you'd like me to explore, as far as putting together some kind of a way to track this information and to share it on our website with the community if people want it, and what aspects you'd like to see on there. Maybe we can touch on that before we get into the second issue, or topic. It's not really an issue. It's the community level data that everyone is talking about that comes out on a weekly basis. So on, well, let's do this. Let's stop for a second. Can I just get some feedback, if you don't mind, on your feelings towards the posting or reporting of other data?
We wouldn't post it by school, just general what happened in the district?
Well, we can't post it by person. So we
no, you
can't
can't do
identify
person,
like a staff member or a student.
Right.
We could post it by school if we wanted to, or we could post it by district. I don't know what would be better received or not. We could also somehow track, you know, if it was like active or not active, you know, because we'd have the historicals on there. I think it would be allowable, and I do know districts are doing it by school, but they're not reporting whether it's staff or student. Like I said, if we were to do that, though, also to reassure the public, I'd want to be able to report on that other data about close contacts and, you know, positive or negative cases.
And will we
Yeah.
post this on our website, or how?
I would probably do like a little link off the website, so there would be like some kind of a little icon you click on to get our, you know, weekly or however often we put it, report.
Right. Just wondering, because sometimes things can get lost on our website.
Well, it'd be great on a new website,
Yeah.
but for our other,
For your newsletter, could you just
Well-
put a link in there?
we could probably put a link at the bottom, but I think even, you know, Linda had created that whole going back to school portion of the website. We could probably put it right there as well. And again, some of the public is gonna wanna see this, others aren't, but if they wanna see it, we can put it in the same place every
Right.
week, and that way they'd know where to go get it.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
I think by school and a little dashboard of our own would be a good thing.
Okay.
I think it's
yeah.
important, we have to have like a district picture. So personally, you had reached out and said, okay, we have one here, we have one here, then 2 at the high school. Not everybody knew that picture. I think that that's something very important for people to know, because as we're going to be asked to make certain decisions going down the way here, for instance, the decision whether to decrease the number of people we put on quarantine at the high school, it's, if there's 10 events between now and then at the high school, it might be very different in our thinking from if there's only none between now and then.
Right.
So I think the district type of picture, very crucial for people to all realize.
Okay. Well, that's good,
People have
that's good
students in
feedback.
different schools.
I think parents need the information to make the right decisions for their families.
Right.
Well, but I guess that's the balancing act, because parents in that school would have the information.
Right.
Like, they will be receiving the communications if someone in their school tested positive. It's just a matter of like the community at large, or if you happen to have a student at Byam, but, you know, you have a student at Center, Byam had a case, you're gonna get notified, but Jeff isn't. And how important is that? You know, does Jeff wanna know what's happening in another school? As a parent, I'm not saying you, in general.
I think we owe transparency to the entire community, right?
Yep.
There could be other people that don't have
True.
interest in the
Yep.
school still want to know, I think.
Yeah, yeah. No, we can, so let me come up with some kind of way to kind of graphically display that.
Yeah.
And I can report back to you, but I think that place on the website that you created is probably a good place to kind of house it. Okay. Second point, that was another link off of this email, is every week, and this is what people have been talking about, the state is advertising the color-coded map of different communities, positivity rates for testing and whatnot. And we were green for a while this summer, and we moved into the yellow area 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. We've been yellow for a little bit.
We've been yellow for a little bit.
And this is the one I was talking about, where last week, when this came up on Wednesday night, 5 out of the 7 additional communities, the MVC, went red. So what DESE is basically, in the state in general, is indicating, these are like snapshots in time. To not make decisions for a community, whether you go from one model to the other, without looking at like 3 cumulative weeks of data. So what most districts are doing is using this data because it's statewide, it's published weekly, every Wednesday night it comes out, and they're using this to help make decisions. So what we would be doing is, if we were to go red, first of all, the first week that we would go red, we would be having a conversation with Sue from the Board of Health to try to find out why Chelmsford went red. Was it for a school-related issue? Was it for a non-school-related issue? We want to start kind of getting that data to figure out what happened. I will tell you that, again, in smaller communities, you can see, 4, 5, 6 people can skew your data, and you can jump from yellow to red, vice versa. What they're indicating is, after 3 consecutive weeks of being red is when, again, we would have been having those conversations anyway, but we then, sit with Board of Health or whatnot and kind of figure out again, is this a school-related issue? If we're seeing a cluster, whether it's the high school or a particular school, and that is contributing to our numbers going up, then we likely would need to change learning models. We would need to move from the hybrid to the fully remote. If we happen to go red for 3 weeks in a row, but it was a situation that was non-school related. So, we have several facilities in town. If a particular facility happened to have a cluster at their facility that had nothing to do with the schools, then maybe we would say, all right, this is non-school related, it's safe to stay in. What I want to press upon you is we do have these conversations, with our staff all the time. We're having the conversation with Sue and the Board of Health as this happens. If we, by chance tomorrow night, went from yellow to red, again, we dive into those numbers and figure out why. We've already preliminarily had some conversations about where our numbers are going. So if that were to happen, I wouldn't be overly surprised. And I would also tell you it's likely not school-related. But that will continue to play out. But what I think we would do is, obviously, we meet every other week. So if we ever were on the second or third week where we're in the red, I would put that on the agenda so that we could have a discussion about where we're at, where we're seeing these numbers, again, town-wide. Are these school numbers, are they town numbers? And this is the report, just in case you hear about it, this is the report that everyone's talking about statewide that's kind of being used to guide that decision-making. I would also, even though this is on the state website, I would likely also just create a link off of our website to this report, so that if family or staff or whoever in the district, went to our report to see our COVID numbers, they could also click off this to see what's happening that week. Because this is a little bit difficult to find, you got to do a search for it. So I'll probably just I'm not going to recreate the report, but I'll do a link off of our site to this report so that they can see the weekly numbers about what's happening. So that's something that I plan to do, but I just wanted to mention this report to you to let you know, and even the public that's watching, when we say someone went red, what that really means, what report we're referring to. We'll link it to our website. But we'd be looking at, those 3 consecutive weeks of why, you went red to kind of help us make those decisions.
Can you put that link in your weekly report? You've been giving us an update to parents and to the community. If you could put that link, because sometimes it is very difficult to find things on our website. So I think it would just be good, so if people want to go back, they can.
Yeah, let me try to figure out a way to,
I think it links to Linda's page anyways, right? Doesn't it?
our newsletter does link to
Yeah,
Linda's
yeah,
page,
so the s'mores links to Linda's page, and that's where he's gonna put it on that page.
You're putting it in the s'mores?
We'll put it everywhere.
Right.
Okay.
It's gonna be
Well,
everywhere.
I'll figure out, I want to do it tactfully,
Boards,
so that,
yeah.
it's accessible and it's there. I don't want people to just go to the newsletter and automatically go to that link and not read, the story or the narrative we're trying to give them.
Just put it way at the bottom.
Then they gotta scroll. Yeah. But again, this is the public report. A lot of people do see it and know it. It's what's being talked about, so I just wanted to mention it to you guys. And this is what would help us, kind of guide in that
Is
decision.
this updated regularly?
This comes out every Wednesday
Wednesday.
night.
Okay.
Wednesday at 6
By 6
p.m.
o'clock. Yep.
Tomorrow night.
Although, 2 weeks ago, it
8
didn't come
o'clock.
out until about 8 o'clock. So, but no, every Wednesday night it comes out.
But the one thing I do want to make sure that we reassure people in town is, like, maybe this is my own personal opinion, I really don't care what DESI says, to be perfectly honest at this point. I mean, I like their guidelines, it's great as something maybe to kind of use, although I'm not sure sometimes what they're based in. But anyways, if we feel that it's necessary to go remote because, we've been red 1 week, but we see that it's a very diffuse community-wide issue, then I think people have to know that that's what we're going to do. You know, if there's a serious outbreak at one of the schools, we're not going to wait for 3 weeks to collect data. We're going to make a decision right away.
Right.
Despite what the DESI guidelines say.
Yeah, but I mean, I've consistently said that like if we ever identified that we had a school-wide issue going on, then that's where, this is nice to kind of frame what's happening within the community, but we're going to act on a school-wide issue.
Right.
But if we have, 0 cases in the schools, but we have an issue going on somewhere else in the town,
Right.
even though we're red for, say, 4 weeks, wouldn't necessarily mean we have to shut the schools down. If this has nothing, this just provides context
Yes.
for the discussion, and I think the rationale to either stay where you are, and I think we'd have to explain why we're doing that, or to change.
No, I completely agree. I just don't think we can emphasize that enough, that it's really a matter of not just looking at the numbers, but, how the numbers are, spread
they're
out
affecting
through the
the
community,
schools, right.
right? So, but, and then we're not going to necessarily stick to the hard and fast rule of what the Department of Education says. We're going to do what's best for our students and for our staff and for the community. So,
Okay, good.
Yeah. So that'll be a work in progress, but we'll get that going for you. And then last one we already kind of touched on, just again, as we work our way through these first few COVID cases and responses, we may in future meetings talk about our protocols, responses, if we want to tighten, if we want to loosen, that we talked about earlier. So that's no action tonight. I just wanted to mention that in that whole high school issue as something that we're looking at.
And is that maybe something we could bring in Peggy again and have her as part of the discussion about if we're gonna change our protocols?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she would be on board with that. I think the issue, there's like the logistical issue, just of, why particular groups of kids would want to pick, that's more like us, that's not a health
Yeah.
thing. But no, if we change the protocol, we
Right, I meant the
absolutely.
protocols,
Yeah,
yeah.
we could have Peggy in for
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Yeah. Next item, just a quick update for you. We did have the tri-board meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point, and the only school-related matters that are on the tri-board are 2 warrant articles that relate to capital projects. So these were items that were already approved by the capital committee last spring. When the budget obviously changed after capital had been approved, many of the capital items were pulled off of the town meeting. But now that the budget is a little bit more set for the fall, Town Manager Cohen did recommend that we move forward with several of these items, and 2 relate to the schools, and I think they're very important to do, and I just wanted to flag them for you tonight. So at the Parker Middle School, we'd like to move forward with the complete kitchen upgrade. We had money that was already approved for the code compliance issues, so that was already in progress. But what we're finding is, we're doing the code compliance issues, they're piggybacking on some of the other just regular upgrade issues, and you'd almost be like doing work to undo it, to do the other piece of the work, when you get into like a home remodel, how that happens. It's happening a little bit in the kitchen. So we're also looking at the fact that if we do have some downtime over the course of this year, and this comes into play with the second project, which is the McCarthy Auditorium, and we could actually complete these projects during the school year when that space isn't being used, that would take the burden off us next summer from trying to work on that project, and we could do it now. So we do have a warrant article that seeks $373,000 to finalize the project at the Parker Kitchen, which I think would be great. All the quotes are in, and that project could just run with itself. And the second project was the complete renovation of the McCarthy Auditorium, and this came in just a little shy of $750,000, about $740,000. And this is a comprehensive, complete, brand-new auditorium. So complete gutting of the space, takes out the seats, takes out the carpet, new floor, lighting, sound, seating, the whole gamut in that school. And again, I think this is important because that facility is widely used. It could be much more used because it's really a nice venue. We only have the PAC, which is heavily, used. Parker doesn't have a auditorium, so both schools and really even the elementary schools in town often use the McCarthy Auditorium if they can. It's well worthwhile. McCarthy as a school is going to be online for quite some time. It's not a school that, is coming offline over the next couple of years. So the investment really is worth it. And again, I think if we can do this and get it done during the school year, potentially the winter or the spring, it really just, the biggest lead time item here is the seating. So if that were ever to come in, because we're not using the auditorium right now during COVID, we could knock off that project and then not have to worry about it next summer. So it would just help us, people resource-wise, not having them pulled in too many directions as we're trying to work on projects. So I'll obviously be at town meeting. I know you folks will, and several are town meeting reps. So just wanted you to know, these are really the only two warrant articles, or it's one warrant article, but it relates to the schools, it's these two projects, and we're trying to push forward with these two.
Remind me, the auditorium did not include air conditioning, right?
No.
I think it's important what you said is that this McCarthy Middle School is not coming offline anytime in the near future. 'Cause I know at one of the selectmen meetings, somebody said, why would we put an auditorium in if we're gonna build a new high school and get rid of it? That's not happening anytime soon, you know?
I mean, unfortunately, and Maria had mentioned this earlier too, like, I would love nothing more than to build a new school. And we went through that whole facilities assessment to kind of figure out if we had one school which we should go forward with, which would it be? And this is probably something, once COVID's done, we should re-educate the community on why we did what we did and how we came up with our rationale. But the best thing to do under the study would be to create one brand-new high school, consolidate McCarthy and Parker Middle Schools into the old high school, which ironically is still our newest building. Parker could then become an elementary school and help us with overcrowding at the elementary school level. Ironically, it's actually set up to be a pretty good elementary school. McCarthy is the oldest building. You would likely build a new high school in the fields across the street, so you need to recapture field space. Eventually, McCarthy could come down. You could develop a whole sports complex there. But even if we were to get approved now for our new high school, by the time you go through and it's not going to happen, by the time you go through the process and get all your construction done, you're looking at 7 to 10 years down the line. So we minimally are looking at at a middle school that's going to be functioning for 10-plus years. You know, to have a whole, age span, or whole, generation of kids go through the school without the, the resources that they really should have, I think is a great argument why we shouldn't wait and why we should do it now. And that's still in a perfect best-case scenario that happens time-wise. So I think it is a wise expenditure.
So these are capital projects that we had decided on last November, right?
Yeah, we had already highlighted them, we had already kind of rank ordered them. They were going to town meeting, but then in March, when we all kind of shut down, we scaled back capital. So we really only went forward with very few projects.
The only reason I mention this is because it was pre-COVID. And so I think it's important for people to understand how this came about. Because they may be saying, well, why aren't we, do we need to upgrade our ventilation systems, or what do we need to do? And, just to make sure that, as I said, that they understand that these were holdover projects that were decided by the capital project committee, last
No,
November.
they were fully vetted.
Right.
They were prioritized, they were rank ordered within the town. I think Town Manager Cohen's also right that, if we don't move some of these projects now where we have funding available, it's only going to make the backlog on the fiscal 22 projects that much greater.
Right.
And we know we have a couple of big projects that are going to take up a lot of capacity in 22. If we can knock off some of these that have already been pre-approved in 21, it's going to free up capacity for next year.
Yeah, and it is forward thinking. I mean, at this tri-board meeting, one of the things that was mentioned was the fact that money has been spent to upgrade and do things at the schools. When they were saying that, and that's why we can now offer hybrid and have the ability to have in-person schooling during COVID. But one of the things I was thinking of is when we went to McCarthy, I remember bathrooms were being updated. It was so needed. It was so important to do that. And if these types of things hadn't been done to the buildings, we wouldn't be able to do this now. So we need to think in those terms. It has to be forward thinking. Otherwise, we can't offer the level of education, and we won't make, what's the magazine?
Money?
Money.
I think it was Money, yeah.
Money Magazine.
We won't make Money magazine as one of the great places to live in this world of COVID.
I mean, I think one of the reasons why everything has gone well is that our buildings were in good shape. There are other towns around where, that was an issue, and, ventilation and all that type of stuff. And, I think the fact that we have been keeping our buildings up gets done. That went a long way towards allowing us to open the way we did. Speaking of capital, now that this is done, we'll have to start planning for the next one.
We do.
Probably the next meeting or the meeting after, and I know Jeff, Capital Committee is gonna start back up again, so we'll have to put you to work again, so, yeah, we'll have to start looking at
We do,
prioritizing our next list of capital products.
right.
Okay.
And the other thing, just as we move on to number 5, I know we talked a little bit about, Dennis and I will try between now and the next school committee meeting to put some draft goals together for school committee and myself and present those at the next meeting. We can talk about them and, you know, have them be kind of action-oriented for the 1 year that we're in to get us through this time.
Yeah, so if anybody has any suggestions, thoughts about really, they're gonna have to be short-term. We don't have a strategic plan, that kind of fell by the wayside with COVID and everything, so really kind of focusing on what we need to do this year as a committee, and Jay,
Right.
same thing as the superintendent and district-wide, so any suggestions, any thoughts, you know, send them my way, and we'll try to incorporate them. So. All right, last,
Yeah, last 2 items for me are just 2 personnel reports, the July and the August personnel reports. Again, these just details the hiring, resignations, retirements, assignment changes within the district. Just with all the hubbub going with the start of the school year, we missed the July report last month, so I just have both on for you. Just for informational purposes, no action required on your part.
any questions on either report?
Do we have a lot of open positions right now that have not been filled?
We have a few long-term, I mean, the typical stuff that happens at this time of year. We're in very good shape with our professional staff, all of our teaching staff and whatnot. We have some openings for long-term subs, like if a teacher is taking a leave of absence, maternity leave, things like that. We're going through the process and filling them. What we have the need for is more of our support staff. We have openings for paraprofessionals. We have openings for aides in the buildings. We're actively trying to hire for those roles. We have the need at all schools. This is just a very difficult job market to try to be hiring people in. And again, similar to other districts, like everyone is trying to hire staff in those roles. We definitely need paraprofessional support and aides. If anyone watching, you know, we are advertising on our district website. We're pushing postings out through school spring. We're going to try to hit some social media outlets. I'm feeling good about the professional staff, all of our teachers and whatnot. It's the support staff that we're having trouble filling. So we do have a need for support staff.
Any luck with
Sorry, go
substitutes?
ahead.
Well, substitutes as well. We have a little bit of a different model this year, though. We're really trying to limit the people, you know, in buildings.
Personally, yeah.
So we're hiring like building-based substitutes. Similar process, you know, we've gone through all of our regular day-to-day subs. We're asking people to commit to us for however many days that they're working so that they're not off working in different districts either. And so as we're going through this process, if someone can commit ideally to the 4 days when we're in person, or if not, if they can only do 2, but at least we count on them for every Monday or Tuesday, there'd be a group of subs that say would be assigned to Chelmsford High School. So those subs would just appear only at Chelmsford High School and kind of be building-based on those particular days. And we're doing the same at the other schools because we don't want the individual subs kind of floating around the district and going to different buildings. We certainly need day-to-day subs too. So I think our 3 areas, I guess, if we want to expand upon it, would be paraprofessionals, aides, and day-to-day subs. Again, we're having, for the professional staff, as far as like the recruitments for the long-term subs, that's something we go through every year. The market is difficult to hire in at this point, but that is, you know, to be expected.
Any other questions on personnel? Good. Okay, any liaison reports?
Yeah. Okay, so,
Tomorrow night will be the first meeting of the Chelmsford Alumni Association.
Great.
I have a Harrington PTO meeting coming up on October 8th. Received my notice from everyone to attend that. Second thing is LPAC. We met, we had our first English Language Learners Parent Advisory Council meeting on the 30th of September. We were very pleased to have over 50, we had 15 participants. It was virtual, it was excellent in that sense because we don't always get that number of participants. And this is the best piece of news. 4 people volunteer to take lead roles. So
Great.
we are going to meet up with them again, talk about the different roles. And I think we've got a working pack this year, and we're very pleased with that. Kelly attended, so did 3 of the EL teachers, which we really appreciate because they were able to give some input and discuss things with parents. And Bill Silver attended to talk about technology, and he was available for questions, which we want to thank him for. And also Eileen Young, and we really appreciated that and her role. Okay, so just to let you know that that's already ongoing, and it was really wonderful.
Anybody else?
It was South Row PTO last week. It was really nice to see everybody. I think that, this PTO, like other PTOs throughout the district, are struggling, with how to, fundraising is certainly an issue, but, a lot of their activities are, socially based. They provide an event for parents and students and whatnot, and we can't do that right now. And it's with great sorrow that I say that the pumpkin fair is on hold for this year, so, as we've known it in the past, so. But, they're continuing to meet and, find positive ways to have an impact on the school, so, my hat's off to all of the PTOs in town, because I think, they certainly haven't, stopped, working hard on behalf of the kids in the schools. And then the a cappella group will be meeting next Wednesday virtually at 7 o'clock. So if you need the link, just let me know.
Center School PTO met on September 24th. Unfortunately, I was not able to get into the meeting room, but I did talk to Erica Thornton, who's one of the board members, and said they discussed, possible ways of doing their trunk or treat socially distance-wise. I said a lot of the conversation are centered around Center School playground and trying to make it more ADA compliant. So hopefully the next meeting I'll be able to get in and see them face to face. All right, any other liaison reports? Okay, any new items?
I would like to read the,
Okay, so we'll do that after new items. I think that's after new items.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have 2 to put on our agenda for upcoming meetings.
Sure.
So one thing that is kind of taken a back seat, and we knew this was going to happen, certainly when I talked to this group, they explained that the reopening process was going to be at the forefront, but the group that we met with over the summer to talk about looking at our curriculum around, racial equity and racial sensitivity and things like that, they have been patiently waiting, I think, to come and talk to us and present some of the information that they have. So I think that we need to get that back on the agenda. It was a very important item through the summer, and I don't think we can let that go by the wayside for too much longer. And then the other is, we get lots of emails from people, and they're very helpful in terms of being able to, give us information that we need to be able to ask the questions. I do feel bad sometimes that I'm not sure if if they're getting responded to, and I don't want people to feel like, we're not listening. I think sometimes a lot of times people's questions do get answered in the meetings, but I think we do have to discuss a way to be able to acknowledge that people have sent us an email, and that we're hearing what their concerns are and how it is that we're going to move forward.
So we could probably incorporate that into the goals, like our just our professional practice goals. So.
Yeah, I think we have to do some. I just feel bad that, as I said, I respond to some. I'm sure other people respond to some, but
Yeah.
I think we need a more cohesive approach.
I agree with the social justice piece. It needs to get back on our agenda. And there are other things which we're going to be forwarding to you as goals, right?
Yep.
So there we go. I agree with the emails. There's tons. And sometimes I feel very bad myself because I like to answer every single email. I don't like to leave it unanswered. I feel it's very important. If I'm going to take the time to sit down and write something that's really important to me to a committee or any committee, I appreciate a response. So I understand what you're saying, and yeah, we have to figure out a way.
Can I just add to that for 1 second? I forget who I mentioned this to, but one of the difficulties that I have when we get emails that copy, say, the whole school committee and say myself or others, it does take me sometimes some time to respond to people. I do respond. I typically do not include the school committee in my response, because if I respond as an employee of the district and I talk about their individual child or circumstances or whatever, as the body, the school committee, and this is no disrespect, really isn't entitled to the student-specific information about the kid.
Right.
And it's like, it can be a blurry line. So I don't want you to think that, no one is responding to the emails. Maybe we can figure out a way so that you know that I've responded to the email, if it's even, me, or there's like one representative from the school committee that's kind of making the, thank you very much, we've received your email, whatever, someone will follow up, and we're connecting to make sure that like someone has responded.
Right.
Because I can't get into like student-specific stuff in my response and include the school committee. So I want to make sure people know that they're getting responded to, that we've heard their question, their concern or whatnot, and that it's not lingering. And you might not always see that I've responded, because I don't copy you on that. So maybe we can talk about how to figure that out.
That and also making sure that we're not running afoul of the open meeting laws, right, by,
Right.
more than one of us
Right.
engaging and responding to a person.
That's what I'm always worried about now.
Right, that's.
Two or three of us are gonna start
Yes, but I think
discussing
we do
something.
need to, we need to acknowledge some way that people are, that they've taken the time.
It would be good. Okay,
Okay.
I'm waiting for you to tell me.
No, I was, my new item is, I'm sure you all received your little
Yes.
letter from MASC, that they are gonna have a virtual, what do they call it, a delegate assembly.
Oh, yeah.
So it's on November 7th, it's a Saturday. So if anybody would like to volunteer to be our virtual assembly delegate, and they're just voting on the slate of officers and voting on the resolutions that MASC, you want to do it, John?
I'll take it.
Okay.
I got
All right,
it.
anybody want to be the backup in
I'll be
case?
his backup.
All right, John, the backup, okay.
We're a team.
So, so we'll go through, the resolutions are online. I'll put them up, next meeting, we'll maybe just quickly go through them and, vote to approve them or not to approve them, so that John has our opinions there, and then I'll just make sure that you have all the information for logging in, okay? All right, they also had some good, if you're interested in any professional development, they have a series of workshops. I think they're Wednesdays at 1 o'clock, though, that's the only bad thing. But they do tape them, so they had a series of different workshops, so anybody's interested in looking at those, it's another good
Some are
resource.
good.
Yeah, some are good, yeah, absolutely. But they're not having the conference down the Cape this year, so, out of luck.
Can I touch TV?
No birthday gift for you.
Yeah, right. All right. All right, we're now to our second public input session.
Okay.
If anybody has any emails they would like to share that.
Well, I have one from a parent who asked me to read it into the record, so I'm going to do that. This is from Lisa Orlando Borrasa, and she wrote this asking that it be read. I'm reaching out today, good morning. I'm reaching out today to discuss my concerns for my children's privacy during their Google Meet sessions. Prior to the start of the year, my concern for my children were mostly centered around their mental health as well as academic needs. I had written to you all in a previous communication regarding these concerns. Today, I need to share a very different but very critical concern my husband and I share. I first want to say that 2 days in, my 3 children are loving their teachers and classmates. They have learned how to ask their teachers for help when needed, and the administration and teachers at, she names the middle school and the elementary school, have done an amazing job setting up expectations for students, as well as a solid structure where students are participating in live classes, taking structured movement breaks, and the teachers are doing a wonderful job building class community, even in this unprecedented situation. I can tell a lot of thought went into the planning for this year. Thank you all for the time and the attention. However, there's one area that no principal or teacher could ever completely control, and that is the privacy of the students during Google Meet sessions. I'm an educator myself. I serve as a math coach in a middle school. Yesterday, I joined a meeting for one of the 7th grade teams at my school, and during the meeting, we discovered that one student was logged in twice to the meeting. Although one of the logins had the video turned off, when we pointed that out to him, he replied, "My dad is also signed in on his own device." The idea that any adult that is connected to a student in the class could come onto the Google Meet using the child's login information is extremely jarring for me. Aside from children's educational privacy being compromised, an adult with egregious motives could be focusing on one student for days and weeks. They will know their full name, their school, their teacher, and any information the student shares about his or her life outside of school. And as you know, during these first few weeks, teachers are community building and doing get-to-know-your-classmate activities. This is a predator's dream scenario. I'm reaching out to the school committee today to share this concern and to ask that you work together as the decision-making authority of CPS and brainstorm some ways to ensure our children's safety while in school on remote sessions. I would hope that you would see this as one more reason to get kids back in school. She then updated this saying that she realizes elementary age students should be in school full-time, but that this is not necessarily the time to do that. I would like to know that safety protocols have already been put in place and that maybe I am just not aware of it. Many of you are parents yourselves, and I know you also worry about the existence of predators, and the dangers are always there, regardless of the current school model. However, this has amplified those dangers and has made it even easier for dangerous strangers to become familiar with children. And it's even more difficult for working parents like myself who cannot be with our children daily and have had to leave them in the care of others. I urge you to strongly consider your safety protocols, especially for the elementary school children who've not yet become part of the world of social media. Elementary age children who, when presented with a friendly adult who knows a lot about them, might just believe it is actually a friend of their parent sent to pick him or her up. Thank you in advance for your time and consideration. I know this first week is an extremely busy time at the school level while adjustments are being made to protocols. However, with today being day 3, a remote learning day, the safety of children is a critical component that must be addressed. We look forward to hearing back from you, Lisa and Robert Barassa.
All right, any other? John?
I don't know if Donna thought she was going to get out of the meeting, but it was Donna's birthday recently. Is it today? When is it?
Later in the week.
9th? Okay.
All right, later in the
Happy
week.
birthday, Donna.
Happy birthday, Donna.
Yay.
Thank you.
I didn't even make any age jokes tonight either.
Dennis.
All
Didn't
right.
make any short jokes.
Oh. That's a
All right.
public
I
record.
think you should
On
adjourn.
that note,
So,
we don't need it, we're in an executive session or no?
No, let's skip it.
Okay. All right, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
before we take that motion, could I say one other thing? I do want you to say this. I have appreciated very much the way that I know Jay has been going to the schools, has been making sure that administrators are doing what they need to do to make staff feel supported. And you've been noticed in the schools by many students. I understand you even subbed and did quite a good job during one of your
I
subs.
did an excellent job.
There is absolutely no shyness in that or any kind of modesty in your
That was a lesson on
excellence in
humility.
subbing. We won't ask you what you subbed.
Thank God. I literally just had to sit there and supervise. The teacher did a phenomenal job with the lesson.
That's
So, no, I was
terrific.
just joking, but,
That's
no,
terrific, but it's appreciated, and I think it means a lot to everyone. So, thank you for doing that.
no, anytime.
All right, anybody else before we wrap it up? Okay, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, very good, thank you.